that please call me Raman. I would prefer that to be me to be addressed that way. I don't like to be called A, Dr. Raman, B, Professor Raman, C, Sir. All those things need to go. I think we are all on the same plane, and I know it's a bit difficult for Indians because we are used to this sir culture a lot, or madam culture. But then I think, at least in my context, I would prefer that we stick to Raman, because that's my name. Anantanarayanan is my father's name in Madras, South India. Generally in South India, we use father's name, further preceded by the village name, but my father dropped the village name for us, so only Anantanarayanan, my father's name. And that's my nomenclatural history. So I would prefer all of you to call me Raman, and I would be very comfortable. I am very proud of being a Raman. A, because he's a mythological hero who needs to be followed a lot in life and in practice. So I like to be that way. Two is that, remember, I am a scientist or a student of science. So the other famous name, which is a heroic name for me, is C.V. Raman, who is actually Venkata Raman, but then he shortened his name as C.V. Raman. But anyway, so there are a number of nice things about it. So Anandita, which part of India you are from?
I'm from Kerala.
Okay, good. Kerala, which part? My roots
Calicut.
are from Kerala. Okay.
I'm from Calicut.
Oh, I've been there in 2018 probably. When I came for that Manipur talk, I also came to Calicut. But maybe not to Devagiri College, but to university.
I studied in the Agri College.
Oh, you are at Devagiri College. Sabu.
Yes.
Sabu is a very respected friend of mine. Say hello to him when you see him from me.
Okay.
Anandita was a part of the leadership program, sir, in 2019. She was a part of it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Anand, as from your name, I can make out that you are from Maharashtra.
No, yes, Karnataka.
Oh, Karnataka, not Maharashtra. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you speak both Marathi and Kannada, or only Kannada?
No, my language is bit of Gujarati, Marathi, and
Sorry, I can't
Konkani,
hear you at all. You are speaking, I can see.
Actually, my
Hello,
language
Cholma.
is.
So, people, if you're not talking, can you just go and mute your mics, please?
Some help sharing the screen, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think I've got along well so far.
Okay, but once you start the session, we'll log out.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Okay, another 7 minutes to go. Right. Okay, Ma?
Stay online, I'll disconnect.
No, but do you want me the phone to be connected, or?
Yeah, disconnect.
Okay.
Sir,
So, Anand, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Do you hear me speaking?
Yes, I can hear you speaking.
okay, so people,
So, like, actually,
Would I have to unmute, Srinath?
No, not you, sir, please. So, people, if you're not talking, can you just put your mics on? Hello, sir. No, you have to unmute, sir, please, if you don't mind. So we can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay. Yeah. How can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Good. Sorry, I'm still struggling with this Zoom practice, so I needed to be guided. My daughter is helping me out. She is traveling, so that's why I frequently talk on phone. So you should bear with me. So Anand Sayanti Saha, Bengal.
Yes, from West Bengal.
Hello, Sayanti. You're breaking. I'm sorry.
Hello.
Hello, Sayanti.
I'm from West Bengal.
Okay, wonderful. Some of the names I can make a connection, but sometimes, for example, in Anand's name, I have made a mistake that I thought it is Maharashtrian. but then he tells me it's.
Yeah, I did the same mistake too, sir. I mean, so.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did, sir. I did, yeah.
See, especially the people from border areas, it is a bit difficult because sometimes you may have, cross-cultural influences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, Dr. Subramaniam says a good hello to everyone, sir. Hello, Dr. Subramaniam.
Hello. We have got another 5 minutes to go, so we'll just introduce ourselves.
Sure. So, boys,
Ritam.
how good? Arkadev.
Raman.
Hello, Ritam.
Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, sir.
You're from?
Dr. Raman, Kaleshwar Swami here. Yes,
Huh?
Sir, yes. I am from West Bengal, sir.
Oh, West Bengal. I didn't see your full name, so I can't make out anything.
I am Ritam Datta.
Datta.
Yeah.
Oh, very clear name of Bengal.
Yes. In Bengali, it's called Datto.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarath Chandran.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I'm from Kerala, sir.
Okay. Calicut or elsewhere?
No, Palakkad.
Palakkad. Which part of Palakkad?
Near the town itself, sir.
Near what?
Near the town, near the Palakkad town.
Okay, you're in Palakkad town.
Yeah.
My ancestry is from Palakkad.
Where from, sir?
It's a small village. It's about 20 kilometers from Palakkad.
Okay.
My mother's village is called Kunisheri. My father's village is Nemmare.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sarah.
Thank you, sir.
Sarah. Hello.
Yes, sir. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm
Which
from
part of
Karnataka. Bangalore.
Karnataka? Huh?
Bangalore.
Bangalore. Okay. Enu, Saukeva?
Tumba Sak.
Arya Devi.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm from Kerala, sir.
Kerala. Which part?
From Pathanamthitta.
Pathanamthitta. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I've touched Pathanamthitta.
Oh.
I have not spent much time there.
Hmm.
Vishnu Prasad. Which part?
Hi, sir.
Hello. Good morning.
I'm also from Kerala.
Kerala.
Calicut.
Calicut. Gayatri.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Good morning.
How you are doing, sir?
Huh?
How you are doing?
Oh, good. Thank you. When everybody asks, how are you doing? I'm beginning to question myself. How am I doing? Yeah, I'm well. I'm very well. Thank you. So you are also a student of Sabu?
No, sir. I'm from Kerala, but.
Oh, Pathanamthitta, you said. Sorry, I forgot. I mistook you.
No, sir. I'm from Kottayam.
Oh, Kottayam. Yeah, no problem. I've got a warm coffee for me. Because you're also at home, you can also have some hot tea, coffee, whatever you like. Rudrinarayan Sahu. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Hello. Am I audible?
Introduce yourself.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I'm based in Odisha.
Odisha. Okay.
Yes, sir. The Puri district, area of Lord Jagannath Temple. I live nearby the temple.
Near what?
I live nearby Jagannath Temple.
Okay, okay. I've been there once, just once. The Department of Science and Technology, when I was in India, held a meeting and I came as an advisor for that. So I visited Puri Jagannath Temple, beautiful temple, but very crowded. Probably it has become more crowded now.
And also, actually, the administration had changed a bit, so it's been more structured.
Okay, more structured crowd now.
Yes.
Okay. Then Professor Kaleshwara, Swami, Saukeva.
Yes. Yes, sir. How are you, sir?
Very nice to see you.
Thank you, sir, very much. And
how are you going?
Yeah, fine, sir. And some of my students are actually joining, and they're really eagerly waiting for you.
Oh, nice to see you first. We have been talking to each other on email without seeing each other. Very nice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nice talking to you now.
My pleasure as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
We should keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Samchita Sarangi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Tell me.
Yeah, I'm from Odisha.
You're from where?
You're breaking, Samchita. Samchita, we can't hear you. You're breaking.
Okay, I think it's 10:30 in my clock, so it should be 8 o'clock for Indians. And can we get started?
Sir, could you just wait for 1 more minute, sir, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. Yes, no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Arkadeb, you're from where?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I'm from Kolkata, sir.
Huh?
West Bengal.
West Bengal. Okay.
Yes, sir, Kolkata.
Okay, wonderful.
So,
Ismail.
Good morning, Raman. Suri here.
Hey, why? Suri, good morning.
Morning.
Who is the other person? I saw somebody else.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, it's only me.
Okay. It came as Ismail for me, the name, and somebody else was there.
I think when people join us, I mean the
Okay, I can't see you, Surinarayanan.
Yeah, same. I'm trying to.
Okay. Anyway, to others, this person who introduced himself is Professor T.S. Surinarayanan, who is a very dear friend of mine and a very respected friend of mine. I feel so honored and delighted that he has joined me primarily to embarrass me, I guess.
No.
Anyway, welcome, Surinarayanan. Happy to see you here.
Thank you, Raman.
All right. So it is 2 minutes past 10:30. So I'll get going because I've got a lot to speak.
Right.
So I am slightly worried about the time. So I will get going and we can talk as we go.
Okay, sir, can is it okay for me to just give a quick introduction, sir? Is it okay?
Yeah, 1 minute. I want to get the screen up again. Share screen.
Yep.
I'll get it organized. Are you able to see my first slide, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Everybody?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, Raman.
Yes, sir. Be clear. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, excellent. Now, before I get really started, I know I want to give a few minutes to Srinath because he wants to formally introduce me to all of you. Let him do it. Otherwise, he's going to be uncomfortable. So I will leave him to be comfortable. My name is Raman. I prefer to be called Raman. Anantanarayanan is my father's name. I spoke to some people about it. And therefore, please don't be very formal when you address me. Just call me Raman. No, sir. No, Dr. Raman. No, Professor Raman, and so on. I want all of you to be friends with me. And that's what makes us more comfortable and at the same plane. We have got mutual respect for each of us. So we will maintain that and at the same time be a bit relaxed and comfortable in this conversation. Please feel free to interrupt me when I'm talking. Maybe I will not spot your questions very readily. I think I have requested Srinath, the moderator, to be alert to that point and alert me about the question. So if there is a slight 1 minute or a half a minute delay in responding to your question, then that's what it is. Feel free to stop me. Let me again reiterate. Before I hand over the mic to Srinath, I want you to tell me very plainly whether this speed of talking of mine and the way I talk to you is good enough. Are you okay? Or do you want me to go slow further? Or is it all right? Are you hearing me well?
It's
Okay, sir.
perfect.
Yes, Raman.
It's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
If you have any difficulties, you must put up your hand, which Srinath will recognize, and let me know so that I will be able to deal with it as you want it. Now to Professor Srinath Subramaniam.
Thank you, sir. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from. As you know, we've been talking to Professor Raman for the last, 20 minutes or so. Professor Raman needs no introduction for many of us here. For those that are new, Professor Raman is a professor of ecology with Charles Sturt University, and is an invited scientist with CSIRO in Perth in Australia. He taught at Loyola College in Madras, India, for a really long time, where I was blessed and fortunate to be one of his students. I did my bachelor's program. Raman taught us ecology and plant physiology. He's one of the most inspirational teachers, absolutely, with sparkling intellect. I mean, that's something that we all, all the students really remember. He has motivated hundreds of his students across the world. It goes without saying. He's so influential that after nearly, I don't know, perhaps over 20 years of completing my undergrad program at Loyola, I went to do a postdoc with Raman. I chased him, I requested him that I should make an application with him. And I stayed with Professor Raman for 6 months. And I learned what otherwise would take about 6 years for people to learn. I mean, this is absolutely incredible and true in every sense, I have to say. He's one of the world's leading experts in entomology, with around, I don't know, perhaps about 400-ish publications to name. Raman was recently invited by INSA, the Indian National Science Academy, on a Ramalinguswamy fellowship to conduct workshops and seminars across a number of universities in India. I was fortunate to be a part of one of them, a couple of them. Really nice. Raman was invited to be a fellow with the prestigious Australian Academy of Science. I mean, this is an invitation that's only offered to accomplished professors and experts in the field. So this is, I mean, I can keep talking. I mean, his CV runs to about 25-30 pages, but again, I promised Professor Raman that I'm going to be really, really short. So I don't want to steal any more of Professor Raman's time. I know you're all eager as much as perhaps I'm to hear Professor Raman speak on behalf of you, on behalf of everyone here. Let me please invite Professor Raman to deliver the popular lecture on scientific writing. So when you're ready, please. Thank you.
Are you done, Srinath?
I'm done, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, dear friends. Nice to see most of you and then know some of your details. I'm sorry I could not listen to everyone. I'm so very honored that Anantanarayanan has joined this group. A, it puts me in a spot because he knows more than me. B, I feel honored by his participation. But anyway, the intent of this particular presentation is to talk to you on what are some of the subtleties or the minor details or micro details which we need to be conscious about, to be alert about when we are writing journal papers or theses or reports. I gave a different title to this when Srinath spoke to me a couple of weeks ago, writing scientific documents, but then I thought I will make it a bit more precise by naming the so-called documents which I had in my mind, because one of the clear characters which most of us need to remember is in science, writing is an important element, and writing that has to have a purpose or a meaning. That is important. We need to keep that in mind. So the focus of this particular presentation will concentrate on that. How we do that, what are the aspects we need to keep in mind, what are the elements we need to be cognizant about, we will talk as we go ahead. And another thing I want to clarify here is that I am not delivering a lecture here. I am only having a conversation with you. So I said at the very beginning to some of you who were there 20 minutes ago that I am here only to share some thoughts. So feel free to stop me if you have got any particular question that is bothering you in this context. But if I miss noticing your question, then I think Srinath will be able to step in and stop me and then alert me to the question. So therefore, if there is a couple of seconds pause, then that is because of that. So I've changed the title slightly as writing journal papers, theses, and reports. So that is one point. And I want you to also keep in mind how I have presented this title to you. I will come back to this style of presentation of this title to you a little later, because that has got a point to talk about in writing journal papers. Now, the next question is, the question is, why write? Why should we write at all? That we need to answer first of all. We need to have an answer for the question, why should we write at all? See, writing is an important skill because this particular presentation to all of you is about writing skills. So I am not going to elaborate much or make any detailed references to speaking skills, which if you feel like we can come back to it on at a later session. But at this presentation, I am going to remind you of or alert you to why write. So the question is, why write? Because we write journal papers, or at least we are expected to write journal papers. Most of us are registered for a research-based degree such as PhD or an MPhil. So therefore we write a thesis. And sometimes we are also writing a dissertation. Sometimes we also write after having completed projects, we write project reports to respond to the people who have funded our projects. So writing becomes an important component in a scientist's profession. So most of you are training to become scientists, and therefore we are asking ourselves this question. Now, why write? Why should we write at all? If you have got any thoughts on this, you are most welcome to relay that to me. At least a few of you. I know it's going to be difficult for everybody to talk because we don't have much time to listen to everyone. But if one or two of you, or at least 5 of you, can share, why should we write at all? I'm not necessarily talking about scientific writing here. I'm talking about in general. Why should we write at all? Should we write at all? What are the advantages of writing? See, if you look into the evolution of any language, the oldest forms of languages were always in spoken form. Some funny noises were made by people, and then finally they provided some meanings to those sounds or the noises what they made. So the noise became sound. For example, if you take the example of the South Indian Carnatic music, there are explanations based on why certain ragas or the tunes are based on the natural sounds we hear. There are certain ragas which are based on the sound which is created by a peacock. So likewise, we have learned to speak based on the natural sounds which we heard. And at some point of time in the evolution of a language, we started writing. Writing is traditionally referred as lipi, the written form. So first they wrote in different ways, which we cannot read today because things have changed considerably over time and modifications. What is today the written form in your language, whatever be that? I found that people are there from Bengal, people are there from Orissa, people are there from Kerala, people are there from Karnataka, people are there from Maharashtra. And each one of us is speaking our own mother tongue or our own language. And every language is written in a different style or in a different form. So there is an element, what is a common underpinning here is why write? So the answers to that is, in terms of scientific writing, which we do a lot in science, the purpose of any research activity is to add to the corpus of knowledge, the body of the knowledge. See, that is the purpose of any research activity. You want to contribute information to the knowledge base which has already been built up. For example, when you write a paper or when you write a thesis, we always write a section. I'm going to talk about it later, but anyway, I'm drawing an example from that. A section called introduction. See, the introduction is basically a section where you provide a context for your research activity. How do you provide a context? You provide a context by referring to the previous work that has been done in your area of research. So therefore, when you introduce a subject, you say that this has been done by A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And there is still a gap or a space. And my interest of writing this thesis or a dissertation or a paper is to fill that space which I have identified as a gap. So therefore, by explaining the purpose of doing that review of literature, which people crudely call, which I would very broadly refer as an introduction, is to add to the body of knowledge which we have. So writing is something very important. That knowledge which you try to provide to others, which we call as results, because the key body of the information you transmit is always the results, but you provide a context for it and you tell the others how you did that experiment or that work, therefore materials and methods, and then you try to analyze it, which is the discussion. They need to be, whatever is that built up needs to be communicated to other people interested in that area. See, and a surgeon working in ophthalmology and writing a journal paper will write something that will interest people only in ophthalmology. Maybe some general surgeons may want to know something more about it. But definitely a person working on English language and the nuances of English language or Malayalam language or Kannada language is not going to be interested in the subtleties of a refining process done by an ophthalmic surgeon while doing an eye surgery. So therefore, the interested people becomes very critical there. Some people may be interested in everything. That's another element, but that is not the general population percentage. So the general population percentage, for example, is extremely limited. And therefore, what we write needs to interest those people who are keen on knowing more about that. So the first purpose of any research activity is to add to the body of knowledge which is already there. And by using the word add, I mean that you are contributing something new. That is very important. There is no point in rehashing what is already said there. I'm not going to go into details of that in the present presentation. But then I need a context for what I am saying or what I am speaking to you, and I'm trying to rationalize that context. Now, the third point, writing is one means of communication of transferring that knowledge. Why I say it is only one means, you can orally communicate, spoken form of communication, that is also there. See, what I am doing to you now is an oral communication. And that is another way of doing it. We can communicate orally. And if you go back in Indian history, you will see that in ancient days, before the paper was known to us, and therefore writing became convenient, they used palm leaf manuscripts. And even writing on palm leaf manuscript is not an easy task. It was a very difficult task. The palm leaf had to be cured and prepared for the stylus or the nail which they used for writing. So it should withstand that. And that involved a long procedure. And that took time. And they could not extract the palm leaf from wherever they wanted. They had to rely on certain palm trees which provided that leaf, which had to be cured, tempered, so that it withstood that. So writing was not easy at all in olden days. Even before that, if you go back, the South Indian history or Tamil Nadu history tells us that they wrote on copper plates. In other words, they inscribed on copper plates. And before that, they inscribed on rocks. See, cutting on rocks or writing on copper plates, writing on palm leaves were not as easy as we do today. So we have to imagine that they communicated things by the means of oral tradition. So speaking is another method of communication, but once we got to know the writing skills, the lipi was organized, then we knew how to use the palm leaf. That got improvised using some paper, and the paper became common element, part of the system. And now we write in electronic media, which is more sophisticated. So you see that writing has become a very dignified way of communication. Now, I spoke to you very briefly about speaking communication or oral communication versus the written communication. When we speak, most of us speak off the cuff. Most of us. A few of us read what is written. That is, there are two ways of spoken communication. But generally, when we speak, we don't read from somewhere. For example, A is conversing with B in a very friendly chat. Then nobody is writing down what they want to speak. And then the speaking is done casually and off the cuff. Now, in such a context, there are ample opportunities that one can use wrong words, A, to imply wrong meanings, or even abusive words that can just pass off because the relationship between A and B is a friendly relationship. But that cannot happen in a professional conversation. In a professional conversation, the speaker has to be extremely careful with the words what he or she uses, and therefore they are not offensive. Now it becomes all the more important when we talk about writing context. Writing, whether it was written on stone, inscriptions on stone, or on palm leaf, they wrote with extreme care and caution, so that they expected that to be read by somebody 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later, because this is how history is reconstructed. We read the epigraphic manuscripts that were written many years ago, hundreds of years ago by people, and then we understand how the culture and history prevailed. But then nobody wrote anything that meant abusive. So we need to be extremely cautious about this. For instance, I'll just give you an instance. I'm an amateur historian of Madras city and Madras state, or the Tamil Nadu state. Now, in that process, I chronicled a number of details of particularly of science that happened between 1650 and 1947. I have chosen this period because this is the time the British were ruling India, and they were at the prime of the colonial history, in other words. I recognize that the British have done a lot of damage, everything, they have stolen, plundered, all that was there, fine. But yet there are certain elements which we have to acknowledge their contributions. So I am in the process not validating and putting them on a pedestal, but trying to tell our people that these things have happened in their period. So in that process, when I do, I'm coming to the point I'm talking about, I consult a number of documents which are thankfully available in the internet, which were published in 1730s, 1750s. But of course, the script is very difficult to read. For example, the old German is written in the archaic black fonts, which are otherwise known as the Gothic font, which calls for a special knowledge of German language. Grammar has changed. So many things have changed in writing also. But what is important is those 1730, 1750 documents are available, and with the technological revolution, they are available in the internet. So I am able to access them, relate to them, understand them, and connect them to the understanding of science that prevailed in South India broadly and Madras state in general. So therefore, the point I'm trying to emphasize here is writing is a means of communication, of transferring that knowledge. Yes, but then when we write, we need to write in a very dignified manner, because how do you know that 200 years later, long after your time, somebody will be consulting your paper in a historical interest? So in that sense, we have to be respectful to the people who read, and therefore we need to write better. So that justifies why I am going to talk about this particular, or what I am going to talk about in this particular presentation. Therefore, reporting is important in any research activity. It helps the people who are around us to know better things, better details, new discoveries, new results, new findings. And B, they are also become the automatic historical chronicles available to people to access them at any point of time. Therefore, we are coming to the more important justification of why write. Because of this importance, which I have justified to you, writing should be precise, elegant, graceful, and easily understandable. Now, these 4 elements which I have identified here, whether it is precision, elegance, gracefulness, and easy understandability, are 4 critical factors which every writer must keep in mind, especially the science writers must keep in mind when they are relaying what they have found as new. So we will go into some details of these 4 words as I am going across this set of slides I prepared for you, because if I start talking about them, then I will not be able to complete everything on time. Time is a very threatening factor. By understandable, this is one important point we should always keep in mind. By understandable, what I imply here is that the reader should be comfortably relating to what has been written. That is extremely important. I will give you a small analogy here. Because you are listening to me here in this context, although I am sitting in a lone room, shut down, there's nobody else here, literally I am talking to the screen, but then I am aware of the fact that at least there is one person listening to me. So if that one person is not there, then my role as a speaker has no validity. We should always keep this in mind. See, in Paradise Lost, if you have read John Milton's Paradise Lost, there is a huge section running to several pages, which is considered to be English language's one of those remarkable poetries, is Satan's soliloquy. Soliloquy here refers to speaking to oneself in simple terms. So this is Satan, who is placed as the negative character against God, who is considered the positive character in Paradise Lost. So this negative character, he is speaking to himself, it's a male and therefore himself. So he speaks to himself and justifies why he is corrupting Adam and Eve. This is how Paradise Lost runs. So soliloquy is an example I want you to keep in mind. Nobody will talk to oneself what is in a dignified manner called as, or in a sophisticated manner called as soliloquy, has no meaning in general sense. If somebody is talking to oneself, self-talking, then generally in India, we consider that something is mentally wrong with that person. So therefore, speaking to oneself is not desirable at all. So what is desirable? You should have at least one person listening to you. Likewise, when you write something, there should be at least one reader for you. And you must see that that reader is sustaining his or her interest in reading what you have written. If you don't achieve that, please be assured that what you have written is nothing but zero. So the purpose of writing or speaking has a relevance in terms of at least one person. That one person should read, at least one person should listen to you. Otherwise, your speaking has no validity. Otherwise, your writing has no validity. So that is where the word understandability of the listener or the reader is extremely important when we either speak or when we write. So we'll continue with the same question, why we write. So I have already talked about this. The reader is the master in this context. In a written context, the reader is the master. See, when you go to a shop, a smart shop owner will say that client is my master. In other words, the shop owner is advised to consider himself that, although not in a real sense, but in a metaphorical sense, that the shop owner is a slave of the client. If the client is not there, the shop has no validity. If there is nobody coming to the shop and buying things, there's no validity at all. The shop fellow has to shut down his business at some time. Exactly in the same way, here the reader is the master. And we are all the writers or the speakers are technically the slaves of that context. So this is a metaphorical usage. Don't take it in a literal sense. So why write? The reader is the master. If no reader exists, then the communication has no purpose, no relevance. So keep this in mind. So we speak, we write, because there is at least one listener or one reader, depending on the context. So this is again a further reiteration of what I said previously. Srinath, any questions? Hello?
Well, so far I
heard somebody growling, so I thought I'll ask. Okay. Now, the next question is, why English? Why English? Why not other languages? When I did a sort of a search before I prepared this particular slide, I found that in the world there are nearly 6,000 languages recognized by the United Nations. 6,000. And India alone, there are at least, although 18 or 20 or 28 are the recognized languages, but technically in India, there are close to 200 languages available. And across the world, there are 6,000 languages. So we need to ask this question, why most of us preferably, or most of us write in English, speak in English, and why that? This is an important question, because unless we have a clear answer to this question, we are groping in the dark and we are running in a forest without knowing where we are going. See, just because our teachers say speak in English or somebody else speaks in English, we need not justify its importance. We need to find an answer to ourselves. We need to explore this question. See, there are a number of instances I can tell you. When I started my research in the early 1970s, I was pursuing a discipline called gall-inducing insects, which is more of an entomology discipline, where I was pursuing the interactions between the plants and the insects. And of course, I was as naive as anybody can think about, not knowing what to do, where to go about. Nobody spoke to me about anything. My teachers, some of them did research, and I felt that they had a better status in the society than the other teachers. So therefore, I thought research is a good option. That was all the silly and stupid and naive recognition I had it for myself, but that was all the intelligence I had. Let me be very frank. And nobody explained to me or provoked me to ask this question, why English? My lecturers spoke English, some of them badly, but some of them extremely well. So I was inspired by those who spoke extremely well. And I somehow was not inspired by those who spoke badly. That's a different element. We are not talking about it here. But then when it comes to communication, why should we write in English? And that question each one of us must ask ourselves. Why English? Why not something else? So I was telling you that what happened when I started my research in the early 70s, I was knowing nothing. I was groping in the dark. Then my professor said that, why don't you look into the bioecology of certain types of insects, which are called the gall-inducing insects. And because he was working on that from a different perspective, and he wanted a different perspective to be explored, so he suggested that project to me. In fact, I didn't select that project. I was given that project. And I agree that I was a bit silly and I should have selected rather than being assigned. Anyway, I can't undo the past, so I will just go back to it and refer to it. So the first thing he told me, you have to collect literature. So he said, how do I collect literature? In those days, there was no internet. There was no even laptop, no computer, nothing, just a manual typewriter. And I used to correspond with people by regular post. So I printed out, that was a style introduced to me. I printed out a postcard. Dear leaving a space. You can write it the person's name. I am interested in receiving a reprint of your publication. Give the details, the dotted line, give the details of the publication, and we don't pay them for the postage. And some of them obliged, many of them did not, because it cost them money by posting the reprint, those stories. So anyway, I built up a big corpus of information like that. I collected about 20,000 to 30,000 reprints in my area and built up my publication. But let's not worry about that. But what was important in this present context is I received papers published in my field from Japan, some of them written in Japanese. And most of the field of research I was doing, I was starting to work on, were done in France, the border country between France and Germany called Alsace. But of course, at the time when I was in communication with them, they spoke French, because at that time it was politically in France. So therefore, they spoke French and their publications were in French. Then the papers came to me from Germany that were in German. Then some papers came from Czech language when they were from Czechoslovakia at that time. Now Czech and Slovakia differently, Yugoslavian. So you can think of all those examples: Danish papers, Swedish papers, Norwegian papers, all different languages that were there. And the maximum I could understand from them was I could only see the illustrations that were included in that and tried my best to understand whatever was written using some sort of a hand dictionaries I had copies access to. It was a major struggle for me at that time. But then I never gave up, because I thought, okay, if that is the case, because the majority of the papers that were being published at that time in my discipline were from France, A, from a city called Strasbourg, and B, some from Paris and some from Toulouse, some from Louvain in Belgium. So they were all in French. So I decided to go and study French. I went and studied French in Alliance Française de Madras for 6 years.
Sir, my apologies, sir. Can I interrupt you real quick, sir, please?
Go on, please.
Are you in the very first second slide now, sir? Are you, because I think there have been a couple of comments that say that they're able to see the.
I am now in that why English, why not other languages slide.
Okay, that's not okay. I think you're relaying the second slide, sir.
What's that?
You have not moved into the third slide, sir. I think we are able to see the second slide now. Why right is.
I thought I moved on. My screen shows this. 1 minute. Hey, this is third. Why right? Is it okay?
So are you?
Can you see that?
No, I can't see, sir. How about others people? You are still in second slide, sir. Why right?
No, this is why right with that pen nib.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then there is a why right with a female, a young girl reading
No,
a
sir,
book.
we can't see that. We can't see that.
We can't see that, sir.
So
We can't see that.
So people, can you mute your mics if you don't mind, if you're not talking, sir. Sir, you may want to use the down arrow. Oh, okay.
In my slide, it says you are screen sharing.
Okay, so now we are able to see slide number 4, sir, which is why English,
correct.
why not?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Correct. That's what.
That's fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
So can I
Yes,
enlarge it now? Is it okay?
Yes,
Can you see the same slide?
Yes, sir.
So I was talking to you guys that I took a training, or I learned French because I felt that was becoming important. Then I didn't stop with that. I did another 4-year course with Maximilian Bhavan in Madras, doing German. So I thought they were going to be of immense help to me in communicating with my colleagues, A in France and B in Germany. But then that's not going to solve my problem. I didn't realize at that point, because there were people working in Japan, people working in China, people working in, and all of them were writing in their own languages. Even scientific articles published in China included Chinese papers, published in Japan include Japanese papers, and so on. So this was the sort of a broad trend that went on. Therefore, I went through a lot of difficulty in terms of learning these languages Not that I've become an expert in those languages, but at least I became a bit proficient, I would say, in trying to understand the papers that were written. That was a big ordeal for me, but I went through that. Anyway, as time passed, I realized that nowadays, even look at the second point in that slide which I'm showing you, scientists in non-English speaking European nations, I've listed the names, a few, they write and publish in English language. This is a dramatic change which has happened in the last 20-25 years. I was wondering, how did this change come about? This was a bothering question to me. When I was young and when I was doing my early research, they were publishing in their own languages, Chinese in Chinese, Japanese in Japanese, Danes in Danish, Swedish, the Swedes in Swedish, and so on. But then how did that change in the last 20 years or 25 years happen to most of them, 90% of them publishing in English? It is all because of the influence of the United States of America. Because when I looked into the sociological literature, I found that just like the British East India Company influenced bulk of the world nations with their English language in those days, once the British East India Company folded up, then the American trade and American commerce started influencing the world, and therefore English has become a sort of prominent primary language. I'm just making that comment for you to understand why this global acceptance of English as a universal medium. If you go into the Constitution of the United Nations nearly 70 years ago, you will find that they established French and English as the major languages for UN. Even today in the Olympics, you will hear that they announce in French, English, and for example, in the Winter Olympics in China, it was held recently, they spoke in Chinese. So all the three languages will be used. So I want you to keep these things in mind when we are talking, looking in, for answers in the question, why English, why not other languages? So what I have said here is English today is spoken and written by 1,130 million people across the world. This is a statistics that is supplied by the United Nations. So my notes is from UN document. So nearly 15 to 20% of the world people speak English. I'm not saying this is a full justification for that, but this is one of the arguments which many people give. 2, scientists in non-English speaking nations such as Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, they write and publish in English language. My professor with whom I worked in Strasbourg, and she used to write in French. Many of her papers earlier days were in French, but nowadays she's 85. She publishes occasionally 1 or 2 papers. She writes in English. China is vigorously learning to speak and write English, and international conferences transact business in English. So these are all some sort of a vague rationalizations why this presentation is created for all of you to appreciate. Then, therefore, if we are keen to have our results read by a wide set of readers, I justified the readership. So if you want it to be read by many readers, then you will understand that the preferred practice that has evolved today is that we need to communicate in English language. So I am not going into very fine details of rationalizing and justifying all these things, but then I think enough points I have given here just to explain the reasonableness, the rationality of using English language. And if you would have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. In other words, English has emerged as a most preferred communication medium. So this is a...
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. It looks like we have 2 questions. Sir. Is it a good time
go
to?
Ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead,
so, Avantika, do you want to go first, please?
It's not about this, what you're presenting, but then you said that you regretted being assigned what you did when you were a student.
Okay. All right. I regretted why I was assigned the problem, because now I realize I was a bloody fool at the time. Because I would think that anybody who has got a master's degree, and if they are keen about pursuing a PhD, which is a doctoral training, I would believe that they should be adequately equipped to justify what they want to do, and they should be able to select the supervisor and not the other way. That is why I regret now why I did that. At that time, I didn't know. That's why that's what I rationalized to you. At that time, I didn't have the ability to think what was the subject I should pursue. I was keen on getting a doctorate, but I did not identify the topic for myself. In other words, I didn't have the background to think and say that, okay, I trained in biology, so I didn't know where I should go. I was running helter-skelter within my mind. I did not know what to start with, how to go about. And of course, that lack of knowledge, then I approached somebody whom I thought knew better than me, and the world recognized as a professor. So I went to that person and he said, okay, you do this work. And I took that. So that element of lack of inability of not being able to select the topic I wanted to work on, and in other words, what should have been driven by interest and motivation was not there. I had a motivation to do research, that was all. But what I am talking about is I should have had the ability to narrow down the topic I wanted to work on with adequate background and training. And that is why I use the word, I regret that aspect now. Does this clarify to you, Avantika?
Yes, sir. Totally. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Avantika. So, Divya, do you want to go next, please?
Yes. Sir, out of curiosity, how many other languages other than English you have published in?
I didn't publish in any other language except English. I studied and learned, but my fluency in writing is not that great. I can write, I communicate. My professor in France writes to me in French and I reply her in French, and that is all. But I write it with great difficulty. See, the problem, I'll tell you, when you are in a particular context, for example, if I were living in Bangalore, or if I were living in Mysore, or if I were living in some part of Karnataka, then definitely I would have picked up the writing skills of Kannada as well, in addition to my basic oral communication skills. But then because I don't live there, I don't have an environment to communicate that way. So I don't have that skill. So if you give me a Kannada passage, I can't read it. Whereas I can use or communicate very basic, possible, not possible. I have to put it in a slightly different tone. Passable level of spoken Kannada. So I can communicate little. That's it. So there are a lot of restrictions here. I can read Sanskrit, I can interpret Sanskrit, but then if you bring me a Sanskrit professor and make me talk, I can't talk. So there are a lot of limitations. So I didn't write in any other language, but I can read them with great difficulty because many words are similar to what I am familiar with because of their Anglo-Saxonic roots, and many words are similar. So based on that, I can make connections. And of course, when there are subtle variations with regard to usages like prepositions and adjectives and slight modifications of words like declensions, then I may struggle. But in that case, I will have to consult a dictionary, which is a long circuitous process. So if you ask me whether I published in any other language, no, I didn't.
All right. Thank you.
So thank you, Divya. Mainek, do you want to go next, please? It's okay. Divya, do you want to lower your hand? Because otherwise it confuses me. I'm just taking notes. Thank you. Mainek, do you want to go next, please?
Hello, sir. Sir, actually, I was asking a question which is about the current slide. So there are 2 points, 2 pointers in the point where it says that it is spoken by 1130 million, like I think it's 0.0 million people. He said that about 15% of the world's population speaks English. And then in the last point, I guess it says if we have to maximize our audience, we need to prefer them in English. So it's like if it's only 15% of the people of the population who are proficient in English, it's like if we want to maximize our audience, our paper, the people who can actually like read and understand our paper, like do we have any justification like that no matter which field we are publishing in, our target audience are mostly the people who are proficient in English and not in other languages.
Okay.
Other languages.
Okay. The first point, which I said 1,130 million people, is a very general statistic. I said I brought it from UN statistic, which talks about the people in general. I didn't specify that any number. I don't have a number for the scientists or people who pursue science in this. I never said that. That is number one. Whereas in the last point, what I'm talking about is about the scientists across the world who are by and large becoming more and more fluent in English language, and therefore they are accepting that as the English language. Sorry, the world medium of communication, scientific communication. So that's a shade of difference here, which I didn't clarify. I'm sorry about that. So to repeat what I said is the first one, English today is spoken and written by 1,130 million people, is a UN statistic which talks about the general population in America, not necessarily scientists alone, the general population in West Indies, a few of the African countries who have adopted English as their mother tongue, a few countries like part of United Kingdom, which is England, Scotland, and Ireland, and so on, and Australia, New Zealand. So if they are, I'm talking about the general population as a whole. So they are all native speakers of English. So that number refers to that. The last point which we talk about is a majority of the scientists have today accepted English as a medium of communication. And that is why I rationalize that Japan is writing in English, or Japanese scientists, Chinese scientists. Chinese are learning English. They are picking up very well. They are speaking very well. They are writing very well. I didn't make a comment here, but at that point I thought I won't say, but now I think I'm a bit pressurized to say it. See, if you go back into the history of India, in spite of being a colonial slave country, all those are negative points, I fully agree. But one of the richest gifts the British have left with us is the English language. And today, unfortunately, due to various political interpretations, we are losing that skill in a systematic manner. Now, in contrast, the Chinese who have never been exposed to English colonization, although there were a lot of trade interests. Hello?
People, if you're not speaking, could you just put yourself in mute, please? If you don't mind, if you're not talking. Thank you. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
So the Chinese who have never been a colony country, they are now, in the last 10 years, are vigorously recruiting native speakers of English as English language teachers, and they are learning English. Whereas we have been learning English for years together, centuries together, at least 300 years, we are losing that skill in a systematic manner. I didn't want to say it before, but now that the question has been asked, so I think I have been provoked to give this answer, which I feel is a little unfortunate, but then we have got our own rationalizations, our own justifications. And anyway, I will leave it at that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So there's a question on the chat. I don't know who Samsung is. I can read the question, Samsung, but if you want to just ask it yourself, that'd be better, because you can explain it and elaborate it if there's a need. Samsung, do you want to go now, please? Somebody mentioned, so okay, the comment is, some state governments insist in publishing scientific books in local languages. Do you feel it is worth attempting? That's the question, sir.
Okay. It's publishing in local language is not, I think, is not anything wrong, because communication of science to people is extremely important. But then that is the communication to people who are not professional scientists. For example, a student of the 8th grade or the 8th class or the 9th class or even the 12th class, publishing a book in that is not anything wrong. Even I have spoken in certain fora in Madras on strong science, but in Tamil, where I wanted to communicate my message to my people. So I think speaking in mother tongue or speaking in a vernacular language is nothing wrong. But then we are talking about communicating within the scientific community so that we have a better readership, better audience to relate to what we have found. See, if you look at one point, today the recognition of your science becomes valid. I am already far beyond time. I'm slightly stressed about time. Anyway, the recognition today comes from how many have read your paper. See, there are so many indices that are available today by different names that tell the people that how many citations are there, how many people have read your work, how many people have cross-cited you. So many things are there. And all of that will enhance only if you write in a language which is followed and understood by most of the people. So communicating in a vernacular language of a scientific information to a common person is not wrong. It is actually a better idea because you want to communicate science. But then communicating to our own people using a professional language is a different element. So that goes into a different plane. So there are two different things we are talking about here, and we need to recognize them that they exist on different planes. So here our interest is only to talk about how we communicate within our group of professional trained scientists. Have I answered your question? Hello.
Yeah, I mean, sir, this question was from Narendran, sir. I think, Naren, do you think your question is answered, please?
Yeah. Hello, sir. This is Narendran here.
Okay, Narendran Kodandapani.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, great to hear your talk, sir. Sir,
Right.
I think increasingly when we talk about research and there's a lot of research being done within the country. You know, there are, I think, a large population who may not have access to that scientifically derived knowledge.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think I share, I think, the same thoughts that you said about different planes. So, to whom we are communicating. But nevertheless, I mean, strengthening our communication also through some other popular languages, I think, would you think would be helpful, sir?
Well, Narendra, the point, let me repeat again. See, if you are communicating to professional people, then it occurs on a different plane. And I would prefer that it is done in science so that it has got a wide readership, in English, so that it has got a wide readership. Whereas if it is for local people, say, for example, let me give you an example. See, not that I'm a big fan of Hindu. I used to be, but my attitudes have changed. But still, I see Hindu. So let me take Hindu as a newspaper for today. See, it carries certain summaries of important findings, which it thinks, or it's their scientific correspondent thinks people need to know. So they relay that message in a simplified language, but still in English, so that they relay the message that this discovery has been made. That is a laudable effort by the popular newspapers, and similarly, a popular magazine. I can't think of other language magazines. For example, in Tamil, Anantanarayanan or Kumudam or whatever it is, they can also feature in Tamil or any other language, so that science is communicated to people who need not have the access to read English scientific skills, A, and B, they need not understand the language used also. See, there is another problem, because when we write professional science, we tend to use a jargon, and that seems to be the rule of the language. So therefore, the common person will not understand the jargon. So that jargon needs to be simplified in a manner that everybody is able to relate to it and understand the context. So what you say is partly true and I endorse it. I support vernacular language. Books are being written. Books, let me reinforce that. And even general articles which will talk about, for instance, health as a science. Everybody needs to know some aspects of health which are discovered then and there need to be known to people. And advertisement in media, in the radio, in the television, newspapers, all these are happening. That is one way of communication. Second way of communication, doctors speaking in a popular language, in common person's language, not necessarily in English, and communicating the ideas. So these are all important for a society to become informed. But then I am talking about a scientific community and the training which is necessary to address that scientific community.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let me go to the next slide. Having justified all that, we need to find a rationalization for the word effective. A communication becomes effective only when a listener in a spoken context or a reader in a written context easily follows and understands the relayed message.
Sir, I'm afraid we can't see the next slide, sir. You have not, my apologies, sir. We've not moved on to the next one. Sorry.
Okay, 1 minute. I moved it. In my screen, it has moved. Sorry. Let me do it. I think
yes, we can see that now, sir. We can see that now, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep it like this. I'll keep it like this. I don't know what the pencil marks are there. I don't know where they have come from. Anyway, see, a communication becomes effective only when a listener in a spoken context or in a written, a reader in a written context easily follows and understands the relayed message. I have already rationalized this point before. So a communication, the word communication is gaining relevance only when you have at least one person as sitting as an audience or as a reader. If that one person is not there, it becomes a soliloquy. So we talked about all that. Then what does the word easily means? The word easily means that the listener actively listens. Now the word actively gains in meaning because it is opposed to the word not passively. I have deliberately used the word actively in red or in brown simply to justify that it has to imply not passively. Passive listening is you may listen, but nothing goes into your ears or in your brain. You may be sitting there just as a sort of a dummy and then listening to somebody. That is not a purpose of easily understanding, because now let me give you an example. A very dramatic example will be in my audience, does any one of you speak Swahili language? Swahili, which is an African language. No? Yes?
No, sir.
No. I would expect a no, because it's spoken in Africa, and I think in the states, I mean countries like Kenya, they speak Swahili. Now, if I were to speak in Swahili to you, I don't know Swahili. I'm just saying it's an imaginary situation. If I were to speak in Swahili, how many of you will listen to me at all? It is just going to bowl you out and you are not going to be fascinated. So you will understand only as long as you relate to that what I am speaking. So easily is the word needs to be related to. The word easily has to be understood that the listener listens actively, not necessarily at the start alone, until the end. And two, the listener does not seek a repetition of what has been said by the speaker. Can you explain this again? Can you explain this again? Can you explain this again? If people ask questions, then the speaker is ineffective. In other words, useless. Similarly, in a reader's context, easily applies to the reader should be able to maintain an active readership. Now, take for example, you are reading a novel. You start reading from page 1 and you want to know what is happening in page 5, page 3, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. You just go on reading and passing the pages and come to the end at the 425th page. Oh, what a wonderful book I have read. You know, that is communication. The reader is kept on the feet by the writer or the author of the book. So there is an active participation by the reader in terms of the end of the full text. But if we make the reader to read, see, there could be a circumstance where the reader may think, well, I need to understand this paper. This is extremely important for my work. Yeah, and I think it is important. I need to understand what the author has said. So if that person is reading that sentence or one sentence or two sentences again and again and again and struggling to find a meaning, then please be advised that what you have written is nothing but useless. So the word easily and effective need to be understood as, in very simple terms, the reader should be able to understand what you have written in single reading. The listener must be able to understand you what you have said in single listening, without making you being asked, what is that you said? Can you repeat? What is that you have said? So effective communication gains in that context.
So there's a question, sir. Can we take a question, sir, please?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Saloni.
Stop me.
Yeah. Do you want to go, Saloni, please?
Yes. Thank you so much. Good morning, sir. My question is from one experience. Like, you know, I write poetry, so I used to write in a very simple words. So my teacher used to say, this is not, you know, the English that you should use at your stage. So from that, I want to say that sometimes we write in understandable language, but our peers will consider it very childish, and you know, you're not up to the mark. So how to match that? You know, to impress with our writings, you know, the large masses and our peers also.
Listen, Saloni, I need to be a bit personal here. I'm sorry, I draw examples from my own experience. I can't draw example from somebody else. When I started writing, that was in the 70s. I told you that this is when I started my science, my exploration with science. When I started writing, I used to write in simple language. To give you an example, I'm not talking about science. I'm writing a common prose. Rama is a boy. He went to school. He carried his bag and went to school. He did not wear sandals. He went bare feet. So these are these types of sentences which I wrote similarly in science. But then my professor, who was trained in a sort of a very classical English prose, he literally flung that paper on my face. On the first day when I gave the draft to him to look at, the next day when I saw him as I was entering his office, it was flung on my face. The paper came and fell on my face. But of course, today people will take a different attitude to that. But that day I was rather being very muted and silent. And I just picked up the papers and he bawled at me and shouted at me, is this the way to write? This and that. Then, you know, there was a rigorous training by him by which I started writing the clumsiest English language I can ever think of. The clumsiest. The most compound sentences I could think of. Every sentence will consist of 50 to 60 words. Grammatically correct, but then they made awkward expressions. And at that time, that's what I thought, or at least I was doomed to think that is right. But then in 1990, I went for my postdoc training in the Fulbright program in America, and I worked with Professor Abrahamson, where I was completely opened up to a new dimension of writing skills. I went back to my olden school days writing, and he convinced me this is what is needed. This is how you communicate. You don't write very difficult prose which will make people struggle. You will lose your audience. So what you said is right. Much of our people, our teachers and our trainers have thought differently. They have been, I'll give you one more example. See, when I started writing, my teacher always said that you can never use a first person singular like I. When I did the work, I said, I did this work. I took this leaf, I took that insect, I compared it, I made it to feed on this. Then he used to say, no, you cannot address, I use I here. It's a formal prose where you have to alienate yourself from your writing. And you have to say the author wrote. Or if it is a number of the many authors were there, then you have to say the authors wrote, authors found. This is how I was trained. But then after my training in America, I came back and I said, I just ripped it off and I threw it away. And several of my publications, I went back to saying that this work was done by me. Of course, in olden days, they used to interpret it as that one has to be modest. In other words, shed the arrogance by saying that instead of not I, you have to say the author, third person singular. And instead of we, you say third person plural. But then in science, we need to learn to say things that I did this work. So if it is right, I am prepared to take the responsibility for this. If it is wrong, I take the responsibility for that. So if you give me a bouquet, I will take that. If you throw a brick bat, I am prepared to take it. So I felt that that was more honest and straightforward in communicating rather than alienating and hiding under the word the author or the authors. So nowadays, I never write the authors. I always say, I did this, we did this. And we have to take the ownership. We have to take the responsibility for that. So when you write, people can have different opinions. But then what is most important is, we are going to talk a little bit about it. I hope I can manage my time. We are going to learn how to communicate plainly, simply, and easily understandably. Can I go to the next slide?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. The validity and usefulness of a research document. Is there a possibility to remove these lines that are running on my slides? There are some green lines.
I'm afraid not now, sir. Because
Okay.
Yeah, because we need to transport it and edit it, sir. I think it will take a little time.
Somebody has done it and I find it a bit interruptive to me. Anyway, a research document, example, a journal article or a thesis or a project.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you, sir. Do you want me to share the copy that you sent me? Perhaps if that's going to be much better, I can do it.
No, don't bother it because anything can dislocate now.
Okay, that's fine, sir. Thank you.
I'll see if I can have this full screen because I am not able to get the details what I want to see. Okay, a research document or a journal paper or a thesis or a project report. These are the different types of documents I talked about. Essentially needs to speak of two things. One, new information, and be easy on the reader. Always keep this in mind. A, it should speak of new information. That is the essential requirement of any science. See, don't try to talk about things that are already known. There are certain reviews provided by people. So in reviews, you talk about the existing information, known information, but then at the end, you should be able to provide a new synthesis for that existing information. Otherwise, that review has no validity. I cannot be talking more details about this here because there are two kinds of reviews. One is called a literature review, where you say A said this, B said this, C said this, D said this, E said this, and so on, which is nothing but a chronological listing of information. Whereas professional reviews, like for example, there are journals called biological reviews, annual review of entomology, annual review of plant physiology, and so on, where you are expected to provide a new synthesis for the existing information. So people look forward to that rather than this chronological reviews. Never try to publish these chronological reviews. They are absolutely meaningless. So please don't confuse with that. Any paper where you want to publish a new, any information, it has to be new. And you need to rationalize that newness of the information. But because that is not the exact context of this particular presentation, I'm not going into details of that. But the second part is be easy on the reader. So the reader has to feel comfortable, and we have spoken much about it. The readability for the reader for whom the paper is intended should not only be comfortable, but also be engaging, enabling the reader to read till the end and assimilate the conveyed message. So there are three elements of what I said as readability. That reader should be comfortable. That is, the language you use must be an easy language, a comfortable language, so that the reader is able to travel with you in your paper. That is extremely important. And two, it must keep that reader engaging. That a reader must feel, okay, I'm getting to know new things. I'm understanding what it is. I am traveling with this person. And that should encourage the reader to stay till the end and assimilate the conveyed message. So these dimensions are extremely important when we consider writing a passage. We are not writing for the sake of simply publishing a paper. The publishing of a paper must have a purpose. The purposes are those which I have listed now. So any discomfort experienced by the reader during the reading will make them discontinue reading. Such an outcome defeats the very purpose of any writing, including scientific writing as well. So this is a very general statement. We have talked about it much, but I want to talk a little bit about a change in the modern English grammar here. That's why I have highlighted two words in brown, dark brown. One, the word reader, and then the word them. Now, technically speaking, my sentence should have been any discomfort experienced by the reader, that is a subject, during reading will make him or her, because we are talking about neutral language now, which is gaining importance nowadays. A sociological language use change. But instead I've used them because the modern English grammar is making allowance for us to use this plural usage as a quantifier or a qualifier for a reader because of gender neutrality. So that is one of the reasons why my auto editor has not identified this word them, although the word reader is singular I have used here. So such kind of modern sociological grammatical changes are becoming valid and accepted by dictionaries, which means the grammarians. The grammarians compose the dictionaries and edit them. So therefore, the language authorities accept this usage. You can say him or her, which is correct. But then nowadays, they also accept a plural usage such as them to qualify for a singular subject, which was used before. So here I have used an example how the grammar is changing with time. And this is an example for that. And I thought I will just highlight that as I am running through that. Is this next slide visible to all of you, or should I go back and change?
It's not visible, sir.
Okay, now is it visible?
Now it's visible, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
sir.
I'll
Now
do
it
this.
is.
I will
Yes,
do
yes,
this
it's visible.
systematically now. Okay. Okay, research documents. At least 3-4 different types of documents we recognize: journal papers, theses, and dissertations, and reports. Each one of them has got a particular characteristic in it. And in this slide, I will briefly explain to you what each one is. A thesis or a dissertation is a document that reports the claimants, that is a candidate's research findings, and submitted to a recognized institution, namely a university, claiming an academic title or a professional qualification. They vary subtly. a thesis or a dissertation, both are documents that report the claimant's research findings submitted to a recognized institution, usually a university, claiming an academic title or a professional qualification. So that's how normally a thesis or a dissertation is defined. But then there are some small variations. I thought that you people must know about this. There are variations in the use of these words in different countries, English-speaking countries. In America, for example, the term thesis generally refers to a research component of a coursework, bachelor's or master's degree program. So a student doing a bachelor's degree and doing a research component in that will refer to that research component as thesis in America. Similarly, a master's degree component will be referred as a thesis, whereas a PhD fulfilling document will be referred as a dissertation in America. So there are small variations here. In America, the term graduate study would generically imply master's and doctoral studies. So these are all terms which you will become familiar when you begin to apply for programs in America. So they will generally use the word graduate study, which can mean either a master's degree study or a doctoral degree study. I have given an explanation for the commonly used or abused word called PhD, philosophia doctor. And if you want to know more about it, I want you to look into dictionaries about it. Now, in contrast to what I said there, in Britain and in Commonwealth nations such as India or West Indies, the reverse is true. The term thesis refers to the document claiming a PhD degree, whereas a dissertation generally refers to the document submitted for a master's title, including an MPhil. So these are all some subtle nomenclatural differences, nothing big. Basically, they refer to submitting a volume of information, what is done by an original research conducted for that particular purpose and submitted in claiming that title. So I don't need to talk more about it. We all know, but I wanted to clarify the nomenclatural differences in the uses of these terms, and the purpose of this slide is that. A project report is quite similar to a thesis as in Britain and in Commonwealth nations in contents and presentation, but it will pertain to a funded investigation and submitted to the funding agency on either full or part completion of that investigation, which is called the project. Having said that, then comes the next key question. What are the key differences between... Hello? Are you talking to me?
No, sir.
Okay. What are the key differences between thesis and dissertations on the one hand and journal papers on the other? I said broadly they are of the same value and style in which you do it, but there are differences. Now, what is the key difference? Let me just talk about one. I want all of you to follow me very carefully. I am not giving any written notes here. I am going to speak about it. So listen to me carefully. If you don't understand, stop me. A thesis, I will equate it with a dissertation. So let's talk about a thesis. Say, for example, a PhD thesis. A PhD thesis is generally submitted by a candidate in claiming a degree. Could be invariably a PhD title. So in that context, it becomes an answer script like you do an MSc exam or a BSc coursework exam. You appear for an exam, you write an answer script, either supervised or unsupervised, leave it aside. But then that answer script goes to an examiner to mark, and the examiner reads that answer script and marks it, and then grades you accordingly. This is the general pattern of an BSc or an MSc examination work. Now, in a PhD context, a thesis you submit. It is a bound volume where you consolidate all your findings and put them together, and it is sent to an examiner. That examiner could be within your own university or elsewhere or outside or whatever it is. But it is seen by an examiner in your absence, just like you submit an answer script in a BSc or an MSc exam. Now, when the examiner reads that thesis, the examiner needs to know very clearly that you know the basics of what you are talking about. In other words, let me give you an example. If somebody is doing a thesis on, let us say, an advanced aspect of photosynthesis, for example, crassulacean acid metabolism, which is a part of the photosynthesis, and if you are submitting a thesis in claiming a part of that segment using some plant systems which use crassulacean acid metabolism, and you are talking about the biochemistry of that, then you have to start first with the definition of what you understand as photosynthesis. The examiner needs to understand that you know what is photosynthesis. Remember that you are not traveling with your document to the examiner's house or to the examiner's office to explain, this is what I meant as photosynthesis. This is what I meant as the metabolic processes of a photosynthesis. This is what I meant as a C4 pathway when I'm talking about C4 pathway. This is what I meant as C3 pathway when I'm talking about C3. When I'm talking about crassulacean acid metabolism, this is what I mean by that. You are not there to tell that. The examiner is reading it at his or her own leisure time, or time available to that person at his or her own space. So therefore, what is imperative here is you need to explain everything fundamental here. Like you write a BSc or an exam, MSc examination paper. That is how you present a PhD thesis. It's a marked process, and it is an examination script, although it has got a slightly different form, but in a sense, that's how it works. Whereas a journal paper is not in the same context. It is in a totally different context. The contents may be the same. You may be talking about the crassulacean acid metabolism, what you have discovered in your PhD. Fine. But then it is read by a professional physiologist, plant physiologist. And at that point, although that person is wearing the hat of being a plant physiologist, a professional plant physiologist, that person has no time to understand or ask you a question whether you have a basic understanding of plant physiology or photosynthesis or C4 pathway or C3 pathway or CAM pathway. So what that person expects is, well, you're submitted to a professional journal. The readers are professionals. We want to know what you want to say in this particular aspect straight away. There is no point of circumambulating around that topic and explaining the things which are not relevant in this present context, because the readers know what they want and they don't have the time to go about elementary things. So, having explained that, I want you to reflect on both explanations I gave you. A thesis or the dissertation on the one hand expects you to explain every fundamental aspect you are talking about it, because the examiner, the reader, needs to know that you know what you're talking about. I need to be certain before I mark you a pass that you know what you're talking about. But you are not spending all your time only talking about that and repeating what is there in the textbook. But you have to set the scene that, well, I know what photosynthesis is. I know what C3 pathway is. I know what C4 pathway is. I know CAM pathway is. And within the CAM pathway, I have explored that in this particular succulent plants. And therefore, I am talking about that. And this is a new dimension. And therefore, my thesis runs in this direction. So you rationalize that. Whereas the same result when you publish in, let's say, Photosynthetica or in Photosynthesis or in Journal of Plant Physiology or Physiologia Plantarum, please be advised that the readers don't have the time to ask you what is the definition of plant physiology, what is the definition of photosynthesis, what is the definition of C3, C4 pathway. So we have to be extremely careful what sort of an audience we are trying to address when we write something. We need to really configure within ourselves what we are talking. Let me give you one more example with the same C4 crassulacean acid metabolism example what I talked about. Let's imagine that you have found a CAM pathway, a novel pathway, which is unique by itself in a particular succulent plant. And then you have something to report. Yes, there is novelty information and it may change the course of future investigations. That's what you think. And therefore you want to share that. Now, we are talking about journal papers. Now, what is the scope of your publications here? The publication opportunities range from a very general science journal, which will accept botanical plant physiological articles on the one hand, to an extremely specialized journals of plant physiology, such as Physiologia Plantarum coming from Scandinavia. So the range is extremely wide. You have got a set of journals in between sitting. So I've taken the two polar extremes of that example system I'm talking about. Now, for the first example, I will give you most of the common general science articles will get published in Current Science in Bangalore. If you have got a crassulacean acid metabolism paper, there are 95% chances that the paper is approved by their board of editors, then it will get published in that. So that is possibility number one. Then leave aside the intermediate systems and go to the other extreme of Physiologia Plantarum, an exclusively dedicated journal for plant physiology published from Scandinavia, or Photosynthetica, highly specialized journal dedicated to photosynthesis. Now, if that goes to them, then they are not interested as you would write for Current Science on the other extreme. For Current Science is read by a range of scientists, sometimes even read by physicists. Not all of them, some of them. Some of them who is working on light diffractions and then the role of light, they may want to know more about CAM pathway. So a physicist will get interested and read that. Whereas when you come to the other extreme of photosynthetic or grana, on the other hand, highly specialized for photosynthesis, then you must remember that we cannot afford to waste our space by talking about the general definitions. So with this example, I have rationalized to you what you keep in mind when you write a thesis as against what you write in a journal paper. The contents and the subject may be the same, but you have to spend your time in editing it and reformatting it so that you are, whatever you target to convey is selling to the audience. I have read range of articles in Current Science to be published have come to me, articles of to be published in highly specialized journals of Journal of Insect Physiology, for example, which is super specialized, a biotechnology journal, molecular biology journal in insect physiology. So when I read for insect physiology, I read as an insect physiologist, where people are trying to tell me about elementary definitions and I tell them remove. We all know this, don't repeat it to us. Whereas when I read it for Current Science, I wear a different hat and I tell them, look, this is not good enough. You need to see that the readers understand this. So please insert an explanation here. So if you take this advice into cognizance, then you are crossing a big set of hurdles when you start your publication life, which is becoming important for future. Can I go to the next slide?
Sir, can you take a question, sir, please?
Yeah, sure. Provided we are able to manage the time.
Yeah, exactly. Avantika, real quick, you want to go? Please.
Like you said that, we should assume that our audience already knows about elementary things and we should not explain it in our paper, okay? But then how much informed do I assume that my audience is? Like, do I assume that my audience knows everything? Like, or like what percent of informed they would be? How should I assume that you know?
Avantika, it's a very difficult question, and my answer is very subjective to that. I cannot be objective. Okay, that experience comes by looking into the journal's instructions to authors.
Okay.
There is a home page normally dedicated for every journal, which has an instruction set of authors. And in that one, by and large, any decent journal will clarify the scope of this journal. Do you understand the word scope? Are you there? I don't see you.
Yes, sir.
So you have to look into that scope And that scope will define to you in as many words as possible. This is the scope. And then if you browse through the articles, then already published articles, you will get an idea about it. Okay. See, one elementary thing you need to keep in mind is, although today most of the journals publish online, everybody is interested in publishing messages and information. I'm talking about journal articles as succinctly as possible. What can be said in 200 words by an efficient editor, then you should say at least in 300 words. You should not waste the space of the journal in terms of 1,000 words. So you need to really, the second part which starts now, which I'm going to start now, we will broadly refer to that. I know I cannot do justification for all that, because my time is limited. Already I have overshot my time, I know. But what the answer to your question is very subjective. You need to really go through the instructions to authors before you select a journal, which will be the best fit for my article. You must make the judgment. And if you think that you don't have the adequate training to do that, then you have to, this is where your teacher or your professor plays a role. You have to sit with that person and then discuss what are the options of sending to journal A, what are the options of sending to journal B, what are the options of sending to journal C. See, one of the big mistakes, I will publicly say that people make a mistake. They are interested in high citations journals. They think that our papers are to be read by, cited by so many people, so that every one of us is able to get a better work opportunity. In terms of already established person will get a professorship, from a professorship to a directorship, and so on. So our recognition, better recognition, comes into focus. Whereas a young person like you will be interested in securing a job. So all of us, we want to see that our visibility in these processes are achieved better. But then we forget the fact that who is going to read the journal article better? Which one will sell better in terms my contents, my spread of information? So I would suggest that you need to make a rationalized decision on that rather than getting carried away by the visibility element. But I can't advise you on this. I can only make suggestions. Because certain things you people are being dinned by your professors, that because they are interested. See, most of your professors are still in the employment ladder, and they want to climb up in positions. So by your paper, who is a student paper, the professors are gaining because their paper, their names are also appearing with yours. So when a paper is getting published, say for example in Science or in Nature Communications or in Nature, you know, it is not only your profile improves, or their profile also automatically gifted to improve. So that person is being given a gift or a donation, although the supervisory work is the reason why they make a claim on that. See, I'm not trying to denigrate any of the supervisors, but then as students, you need to be careful about this. Where is a better readership for your articles, you must justify. See, I told you that I write a lot of historical stories, and I publish them only in Current Science in India. If you take the Current Science Index, you will see I have published about 80 to 90 journal articles on history of science in Madras. This is besides my science work. Why do I write it in Current Science? Because two reasons. One is that I want Indians to know about my stories, more than somebody living in Scotland or somebody living in Sweden knowing about this, publishing it in Sweden or publishing it in Edinburgh. Because I get invitations to write in Edinburgh journals and Scandinavian journals. But I simply say, no, this is about India, I will write in India. And the second journal I have chosen to publish is Indian Journal of History of Science from INSA. For a variety, I publish here and publish there. Because my readership has to be Indians. I want them to know my story. You may ask me how many are reading Current Science. Yes, I understand that. I don't want to write in Hindu because I cannot write like a popular science writer. I have a difficulty there. I can only write as a scientist. And therefore, my language will be understood only by scientists. And therefore, I write either in IJHS or in Current Science. That's it. So I am very clear about it. It's if I wanted to be, then I could be sending for the sake of better visibility, better brownie points, better recognition in the world. I could be sending it to Archives of Natural History in Scotland, which is having a very high citation in the historical journals. But I don't do that. Although I get invitations from them. Repeatedly they write to me. But then I don't want a Scotsman to know about my country, my people, my history. So there are a lot of approaches differences here. I just clarified them. Anyway, sometimes it may be not likable to many. So let me not go into that.
So
okay, I'm going
just a quick comment, sir, if you don't mind. We have 20 minutes left and it looks like we have at least 3 more questions. So do you want to take them or do you think you should?
I want to take the questions, but the second part I will run through. Technically, I will run through. Because some of them I would have covered, because it's better to deal with the questions.
Absolutely, sir. Okay, yeah, sure. In which case, Sarat, do you want to go next, please, real quick?
Sir, I had lowered my hand. My question was to ask for Raman sir's opinion about popular science writing, but since he kind of referred to that in his previous comment already.
Okay, okay, yeah, thank you, Sarat. Yeah. Ritam, you had a quick question, real quick, Ritam, please.
My problem is I submitted a manuscript on a popular publishing house and they asked me to edit by a native speaker. How can I overcome this? Because it takes...
You don't need to. Ritam, I'll tell you one thing. You see, this is one normal attitude some of the publishing houses have. Even the journals have. This is one major problem. It is, I don't know how to solve this. I have no solutions also. But then probably you can argue to them that I have written it in the best language that I could provide, and it is easily understandable to many people. I have used a simple language, yet maintaining the style which is required for a professional writing. But then if it still persists, then you are fighting against a rock. You are hitting against a rock. Because certain people are very fussy about it. Very fussy. I know that. It's very unfortunate. I have gone through that experience immensely and considerably. Just because my name is not English, native speakers of English. But then the funny part is that, although they say native speakers of English, there is a general assumption even among them that any white person speaks good English, which is ridiculous. A Scandinavian is not a native speaker of English. A German is not a native speaker of English, but they assume that they are all native speakers. These are all some flaws and follies in the system. And I don't think I have any solutions for that. We have to only learn to fight it. I'm sorry, I have no answer. This is a prudent problem. This is a practical problem.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir. I mean, sir, can I make a quick suggestion, sir, if it's okay? Because we have another 20 minutes. If it is not too much to ask, do you think we can have another, I don't know if it is not too much to ask, sir, can we have another hour session later, whenever you're free to cover? Yeah, because, I mean, it's so interesting.
No, the point is I am always ready. I am always prepared to do, but then the continuity will be lost.
Okay.
See, the element of continuity, the spirit with which we are talking. I have built up a momentum within myself.
I understand, sir.
That momentum will be lost when we try to restart whole thing, and then it is something like kickstarting a car. If the car doesn't start in olden days, we used to push a handle in the front of the hole and then push the engine up, rev it up. Now, I think I am sufficiently revved now. That is why you get some very passionate comments and even angry comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, sir.
That's all part of the game.
Sir,
I will try to be as brief as possible. I want to keep to time. I understand. I know Zoom is a ruthless disconnector. So,
no, sir, not sir. Actually, we can. This will stay live for another 20 hours, sir. It's a paid facility.
20 hours. I don't want to offer any pain to people, but I will. So the next part is more on the logistics and stylistics in writing scientific documents. I will because I've already spoken about some of them. I think it will not be very elaborate. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about is the sensitivity to grammar. I want you to be aware of English grammar is a very loathful experience. Every one of us dislikes grammar like anything. I know that. I'm fully aware. I also disliked it. But over time, I have developed a liking and I've started learning about the grammar. And I think it has helped me a lot. But then I will not insist that you need to have a knowledge of grammar to write good science. What is necessary is a sensitivity of grammar. That is what is important. For example, if the first person singular pronoun is I, then if you want to use a verb like to come, then you must remember that when you conjugate it to I, it is always I come, not I comes. That sensitivity is important. Similarly, when it is to the second person singular you, it is you come. When it is a third person singular he, it is he comes. She comes, it comes. And when it comes to plural, first person, we come. And you, plural, come. They, which is a plural for he, she, it, they come. See, the advantage with English language is, or most of the Anglo-Saxon languages is, there is only one shade of difference in the verb usage when it conjugates with I, you, it, he, she, they, we, you, so on. Anyway, just to brush up your memory that some of you may know, some of you may not know, when I was a school student in India, this was the book that was introduced to me as a school student. Be aware that I never studied in English medium school. I studied in a local Tamil medium school in Madras. But we had an English class and this grammar book was introduced to me and I used to dislike it like anything. Anyway, let's go to the second question. Is it direly necessary to master English grammar rules in our present context? Present context here refers to scientific writing context. And my answer is there in the next. No, not necessary. Because modern English language specialists, you don't use the word linguist. Because linguist means the one who does research on the use of English language as against many other languages. So he is a linguist. A person who speaks many languages is not a linguist. Again, we in India misuse this word when somebody speaks several languages. Oh, he's a linguist, which is incorrect. You should use the word polyglot. Glot, you may remember that the throat part is known in medical terms as glottis, and the glot is the one who has got several tongues. So polyglot is one person who can speak several languages. So don't use the word linguist. Here, I am talking about a person who is a language specialist, who speaks about the grammar, who speaks of the word origins, acceptance and introductions of new words, and so on. Number of Indian words have been accepted into English, which are, why I say accepted, because the world dictionary, standard dictionary, which is Oxford Dictionary and Merriam-Webster's in America, they have all incorporated those words as part of English language. Once a word finds a place in a standard dictionary, then that word is accepted in English language. That's the dictum. So therefore, the people who create the dictionaries are the people who are the language specialists, who clarify that the mastery of grammar is not essential for us. When I say us, it means who use English language as a second language, people like me and you, and two, as a vehicle to transmit results found in science experimentation. That is where you want to communicate your findings, scientific communicator or science communicator. Nevertheless, it will be useful for us if you knew the style in which English is spoken and written by native speakers. It is always a good skill to know how the English native speakers, already a question about native speakers came about. So I am dwelling on that in slightly greater length, how they speak and how they write. So it is always good to know that. This means that we need to recognize and we need to speak and write acceptably well, and more importantly, correctly. We should be able to write in a dignified, correct language. A correct language is considered a dignified language. An incorrect language is undignified language. In other words, we need to develop an innate, intuitive, you don't say intuitive, you say intuitive sensitivity of grammar. There is a car brand in America which is spelled as B-U-I-C-K. You don't read it as Buick, You read it as Buick. So it is the UI spelling that is making that sound. So in other words, we need to develop an innate, intuitive sensitivity of grammar. Another word which is commonly said in India badly is T-U-I-T-I-O-N. T-U-I-T-I-O-N, which is people read it as tuition, whereas we need to read it as tuition. Anyway, how to do this? Regular loud reading of popular magazines and quality newspapers will reasonably empower us with standard and popular words and expressions. This practice will enable us to reuse them appropriately in scientific texts. Previously, when I used to talk on this theme, I used to say you can read Indian Express. I'm sorry, not Indian Express, Times of India and Hindu. I don't follow Times of India. Occasionally I do, but regularly I check in Hindu. I'm highly disappointed with the present day Hindu, which includes a lot of faulty and flawed sentences. Very awkward. I'm sorry to say this, except for one writer by name Paneer Selvam, who writes a column in Hindu. Except his texts and passages, I'm not happy about many, but I will strongly suggest this Reader's Digest, which still seems to have a very good quality in terms of English language prose. I was deliberately chosen an Indian edition here, which talks about Shashi Tharoor and Sudha Murthy, Nazruddin Shah, you can see at the bottom. So even the Indian edition of Reader's Digest is high quality in terms of language. So if you want to really improve your language skills, I would encourage you to read such popular magazines, which will help you to build your word power. Okay, now I need to go back to this system. I have to follow a different style. Sensitivity and grammar, then continued. Sensitivity and grammar continued. I'm going to the next slide. Have you come back to this sensitivity and grammar continued? Hello.
It's visible, sir.
Yes, sir, we can see the slide.
Good. All right. I'll use this as practice what I'm doing now. So I'll just give you a few points here. These are more tips I want you to think about. Thinking in our respective mother tongues and translating the composed text into English will invariably turn out to be faulty. So I know most of us do it mechanically. I would encourage you to avoid this practice if you are keen on building up your language capability in English. One of the major faults is doing that. For example, I give you an example. One common erroneous and carelessly used expression in India is to give an exam. In standard English, it is not used at all. In the accepted British use will be to sit an exam or to take an exam. I sat my chemistry exam this morning. I will be taking my chemistry exam tomorrow. So consciously, we need to avoid using such words to give an exam, which is, I understand, after talking to some people, that it is a translation of an Hindi expression, which I don't know what it is. But I've been told that that is a literal translation of that. So the better expression or the British usage will be to sit an exam or to take an exam. So these are some of the common problems when we translate our mother tongue and translate it into English. Another common error is very commonly used. Even in Hindu, I've read many big people who write supposedly good English. They also write like this. They use the word firstly. Firstly is an incorrect usage because it is used both as a grammar defines it as both as a noun and as an adverb. So we cannot say firstly at all. If you want to make a list of things and you want to say first, say first. First, comma, point. That's it. No firstly. Because first is also serving both as a noun and as an adverb. Whereas when you want to continue on, you say secondly, thirdly, and fourthly. When you use second and third and fourth, nothing wrong in saying second, third, and fourth. But if you want to be keen about that Lee business, then you can add a secondly, thirdly, fourthly, but not with firstly, no firstly, but nothing beyond. So then afterwards it becomes fifth, sixth, seventh, and so on. So I am only here to point out that many of us tend to use this casually, carelessly as firstly, which is not a desirable expression. Then another very standard error we make is writing up to. we always think it is similar to into, which is written as a one word preposition, whereas up to is always written as a two-word preposition, like I have written there in the slide. It is not written as one word. So this has to be carefully written, and we need to be conscious about these things. These are only examples. If I start listing the errors that we make, then it will go an endless list and I will be talking for ages. So I cannot do justice for that. So I just touched on one or two examples here to illustrate, because I wrote up to in the point, second bullet point, third bullet point. Then I thought I will speak about it in the fourth bullet point. So these are all the examples of how we need to be sensitive to grammar. Then the next point is how to arrange logical thoughts in short, crisp sentences. This is a very important trait in scientific writing. Logical thinking is extremely important in science because logic drives science. So therefore, when we write also, we should write logically. Argument A must be followed by argument B. Argument B must be followed by argument C. Not argument A followed by argument O, argument P. So there should be a logical flow in what we are saying. This is extremely important. Then thoughts need to be phrased as short and crisp sentences, better than long and winding sentences. I gave you an example at the very beginning that my professor in 1970s and 80s, he wanted me to write long sentences because he told me that the proficiency of English language is better demonstrated only when we write long winding sentences, which is the silliest thing I can ever say. We should always learn to write short and crisp sentences, which are precise to the point. We need to speak elegantly and precise to the point. With the lesser the subsidiary clauses you add to the sentence, the better it will be understood by everybody. And to give you an example, because most of us are from India, I think I can give some examples of those brilliant writers who wrote such an elegant language. Sorry, I'm speaking examples more from southern India because I know only of them. Is R.K. Narayan from Mysore, who was born in Madras. But then C. Rajagopalachari was the Governor General, and of course Jawaharlal Nehru. All these people have written some brilliant pieces of English language with short and crisp sentences. If you happen to read their works, then you will learn how to write short and crisp sentences. And they in fact had an extraordinary knack of skillfully and craftily composing sentences and words. They wrote short and crisp sentences with prudence. And this is something brilliant. The more we try to read these passages, I'm sorry, I'm not very contemporary with modern writers. I don't know. So I will avoid doing about that because I have not read. The other suggestion will be to minimize the use of passive voice. Contemporary writing style prefers using active voice sentences. See, I already spoke about this when I referred to the reference of I against the author, we against the authors. Active voice sentences are more straightforward than passive voice sentences. What I was taught when I was in school and college, when I was doing my reports, scientific reports, lab reports, I was told that instead of saying I did this, I lifted this tube, I poured the solution into that, I was told that the solution was poured by me or poured by the author into that tube. And similarly, I put the tube on the flame. The tube was put on the flame by me. Whereas active voice sentences are more straightforward than passive voice sentences. At least by a few words, they are shorter. When you say that I did this, you are saving 2-3 words. Definitely, it is shorter. Then two active voice sentences offer a tone of ownership to the reader. I did this. If it is a mistake, I will accept the mistake. If it's an error, I will accept it. If it is something good, if it is fantastic, I will take the bouquets. So you have a ownership. Then another point which I added the last minute, that is just this morning, that's why it is standing a bit separately, is the use of minimal capitalization versus maximal capitalization. Now, I told you at the beginning that I wanted you to be sensitive to the way I have written my caption when I showed you the first slide. You may remember that in writing, I had capitalized W. In skills, I had capitalized the first letter S. Thesis, I had capitalized the letter T. Dissertations, I had capitalized the letter D. Whereas I didn't capitalize the letter A in and. I wrote dissertations and project reports. So in and, I didn't capitalize the letter A. If you remember that, then that is the style what is called as maximal capitalization, where you capitalize all the words in a title, preferably in a title, usually in a title, where you capitalize certain words except the prepositions and conjunctions. Conjunctions are and, example, because. These words are all conjunctions. They combine sentences or fragments. Whereas prepositions are like to, for, from, about, and so on. So you don't capitalize those words which are used as prepositions. So except that, all other words you deliberately capitalize for the sake of what is called as a better presentation, a neat presentation. So this is called a maximal capitalization style. So if you go into the internet, you can see a lot of details about it. There are stylistic matters. Whereas on the other hand, I could have also used a minimal capitalization, except for the pronouns, that is the names of people and names of towns. I would not capitalize any word, even if it is not relevant. So therefore, if I had written using my minimal capitalization in my title, I would have said, except for writing in the first word W capital, all others would be in small letters. So that is minimal capitalization. So if you have more doubts, check about that rule in the internet. Internet is such a wonderful gift for all of you. Things are so easy. People explain things wonderfully. Before you finish the question is there in the internet screen. Then be sensitive to the laptop's auto editor. When you write a manuscript, the auto editor is so sensitive. It highlights certain errors. It could be a spelling error. It could be a grammatical fault. It could be something else. Please be sensitive to them. Check why it highlights that. There could be several reasons. For example, when I write in this country, when I write program, this country recommends PROGRAM. According to the standard Macquarie dictionary, which we use, which is an Australian dictionary, it is PROGRAM. And that is what I am expected to write. But when I write articles for publishing in India, I will write BROGRAMME, which is the standard spelling according to the Oxford Dictionary. So therefore, when I write for India or for Britain, I will use PROGRAMME, although my computer is set for Macquarie. It will highlight. So I will look into that word. Then I will tell the computer, ignore. Then I will go ahead. I don't simply ignore without considering what it is trying to remind me. So please consider and be sensitive to the laptop's auto editor, which it saves a lot of effort and struggle and pain for you. Whereas in olden days, when I was using the manual typewriter, if I made a mistake, I have to read it and reread it again and make a correction with my pen, which was definitely more awkward. Whereas things are much more sophisticated and more elegant than before. So you need to consider those points. And I will go to the next slide because I'm running out of time. Then comes the next important point, which is extremely important in our scientific writing. There are two elements. One is called the brevity, that is being brief, and the other is called clarity, being clear. There are two elements. In scientific writing, brevity is important. But always keep in mind, clarity is more important than brevity. So you don't sacrifice clarity for the sake of brevity. Always keep that in mind. But try to be conscious of the fact that we need to write briefly. Where we can cut down the words, remove them, as long as you are not sacrificing clarity. So I'll give you a few examples here. One other requirement in scientific writing is to remain brief. Are you with my slides now? I have third slide. Brevity is important.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Because I followed that rigmarole which I was doing before. So one other requirement is to remain brief. Brevity means to being concise, precise, sharp, and accurate. Now, I have deliberately used the word to being here because I want you to be aware of a very occasional but an extremely stylish use of continuous verb form, that is following two verbs ending with ing, which is normally considered a continuous tense. So this we use to being concise. This is a very elegant, stylish form in English language. Modern English recognizes it, which is otherwise known as the gerund usage. G-E-R-U-N-D, gerund. This is a very stylish use, but be very careful when you use it. But when you write it, the language becomes extremely stylish and pleasant and delightful. So to being concise, precise, sharp, and accurate is referred as remaining brief. In other words, to being concise, I am also alerting you to the occasional but stylish use of continuous verb form, that is verbs ending with ing as nouns. We use here as nouns, sometimes used after the preposition to. For example, you might have been familiar with that common phrase, look forward to, which is again a very elegant phrase, which is done by many people, but sometimes very badly. Look forward to coming, look forward to going, look forward to seeing. This is the standard accepted gerund usage. You don't say look forward to see, look forward to come, look forward to read. Incorrect. You have to say look forward to coming, look forward to going, look forward to reading, look forward to seeing. So this gerund usage is always used with look forward to, which is many of us use but badly. So just be aware of that. Many a time it denotes, many a time is always written as singular, although many here connotates plural. Many times or many a time. So be careful about that. It denotes grace and elegance. Now there's another expression of gerund here. There's no to here. Remember the example I've given. I dislike hearing Thomas speaking German. So I dislike or I hate hearing Thomas speaking German. So hearing and speaking are, because dislike is a verb, hearing and speaking are gerund usage. They function as nouns here. Now, brevity differs strongly from the reports written in humanities and other art subjects. See, I tried my best to impress on some art historians, and I've tried my best in history articles, history journals, but invariably I have found with a disastrous experience because they don't like the way I write. Their writing style is very different. They write what I would describe as a circumambulatory prose. They go around with elaborate details, which as a scientist I consider is totally irrelevant. So therefore I have stopped writing, but I want you to be alert. If you want to write for science and science journals, then remember that our style of writing is very crisp and to the point. In science reporting, we need to practice thinking straight and expressing our thoughts precisely with carefully selected words. So we select our words. Every word implies what we have in our mind. Exactly what is that? So that means we have to build our vocabulary better, and building vocabulary comes by reading more, writing standard authors. I have given examples, Reader's Digest, R.K. Narayan, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rajagopalachari, and so on. So by reading such authorities and by good writing, we build our vocabulary, which is going to help us immensely. In journal papers, a contextual explanation, which is otherwise referred as introduction, is essential. And I spoke to you about it very briefly at the beginning, so I'm not going to go into the details. Otherwise, the readers will be lost, not knowing and contextualizing what they are reading about. But the contents of the context needs to be short and to the point. We don't write like historians. We write like scientists. Thinking precisely and writing briefly are excellent, but the intended message and its purpose need to be clear to the reader. So that is what I said as brevity versus clarity. So clarity is more important than brevity. Therefore, the message here is the text should be crystal clear to the reader. So clarity takes greater priority than brevity. We want to be brief, but at the same time, we want to be very clear in what we are talking about. So to achieve clarity, we need not be wordy. When we use words unnecessarily, and we Indians have got this great skill of describing things in a very wordy language. We are extremely verbose people. We have got a tendency to build what we consider as ornamental, whereas ornamentation is not necessary. I'll give you one example. When we want to say that somebody is poor in a particular skill, then we want to say, he's very poor. Why? What is the need for the very? How do you quantify that? How do you explain that? How do you value that very? The very has no meaning. As again, when you try to look at it from a scientist perspective, you may say it's an arbitrary expression, you may have a subjective expression, but all that have no meaning in a written context. In a spoken context, there could have been some meaning because you may want to provide a gesture explanation for that, non-verbal communication for that. But in a written context, remember that you are not traveling with your manuscript. Your manuscript speaks for you. So, and it has to be very articulate and it has to be very precise and accurate. So there's no need for using silly words like very. I will give you another example. What is the difference between long and very long in a written context? Unless you provide a value for long means it is less than 10 centimeters and very long means more than 100 centimeters. If you don't provide a contextual meaning for A very long and B long, it has no meaning, especially in science writing. This word very has no meaning at all. Similarly, another useless word which I find many people use randomly, and I find it very uncomfortable to accept, is this word etc., which is it is not an English word, it is a Latin borrowed word and used widely in English. But then etc. means and many others following that. So you may say A, B, C, etc. How do you expect that the reader will know you mean D, E, F and not X, Y, Z, which are totally distanced from A, B, C? So we assume that, hello?
People, if you're not talking, would you mind muting your mics, please?
Okay. Yeah, what I'm trying to say here is, if you don't imagine that what you have in your mind, the reader will also have in his mind or in her mind. It is impossible. You cannot assume that the reader knows what you have in your mind. Two options. Either you say completely what you want to say. Say everything what you want to say. You say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J up to Z. You say that. Or if you don't want to say, stop with ABC. Stop with that. Don't use this silly word etc. which has no meaning at all in a written context. In a spoken context, at least because of the non-verbal communication, which doesn't even apply in my context, spoken context, but I'm speaking through online system and you don't see me directly because you're seeing the screen, it is going to be impossible for anybody to understand what you're implying. So therefore, let us not unnecessarily waste words. We need to be very prudent with words, thrifty with words, be articulate, use precise words, select them, think before you talk. Okay, this is the word I will use here. So I will give you one more example here. I've given it in the notes I am presenting to you. There is a subordinate conjunction which is fascinatingly used by many British authors even today. Just because the British use it doesn't mean that it is absolutely right. In order to. Now I will give you an example. In order to catch a bus, I ran to the bus stop. This is a sentence. Now look at the second sentence I'm going to tell you. To catch a bus, I ran to the bus stop. Now tell me the differences you make out between in order to catch a bus, I ran to the bus stop, as against to catch a bus, I ran to the bus stop. What is the difference? I would think that you understand the same meaning with sentence A and sentence B. Now, why do you unnecessarily add words like in order before to? This was an archaic style. 200 years ago, the British language people used this to provide a justification. But now we think that these are redundant words. In other words, they have no role, no purpose. So we need to be prudent and skillful in selecting right words. How can you help yourself in doing better tasks? And my experience, personal experience, is reading loud a written text. Not once or twice, I read it at least 15, 20 times to myself. And as I read to myself, I become a double personality. I know it's not a desirable trend, but then for the sake of convenience, I'm explaining. I become the speaker, I become the listener. So I listen to my own words when I'm reading to myself, and I am able to identify certain errors in the sentence, certain extra words in the sentence. I'm able to limit the unnecessary usages. I'm able to edit, in other words, into a prudent, understandable, easy to read, comfortable text. So reading aloud has helped me a lot. And in that process, you know, today, Google, the divine Saraswati is available to us at the touch of a button. You just touch Google and ask the question, how do I say philanthropy? And it even tells me how to say that word. There's a pronunciation key, and a native speaker speaks the word philanthropy, goes on repeatedly saying that word unless I feel fed up with hearing that and stop that. And it says in such a way that it splits the word philanthropy. So I get the word exactly how to say that. Similarly, if I've got a question, how do I say the word which spells A-L-I-B-I? A very simple word, but the English language describes that it has to be said not. Let me reinforce, not as alibi, but as alibi, Gemini. So you can listen to these words. Today, the world is so easy. I just asked the Google, how do I say this word? How do I read this word? How do I spell this word? Everything is answered there. Previously, when I was young, I have to check the Concise Oxford Dictionary, which is sitting on my desk even now. Right now, it is sitting on my desk. And I have to check every word, how to say this word, the phonetic key, the spellings, everything. But today, I don't open that book at all. It is there in my internet. I just go and check, how do I spell this? Is it the British spelling or American spelling? I want to send an article to America. I want to follow Merriam-Webster's. So all this is there. Life is so easy, my dear young friends. So it is not as difficult as most of us have experienced. So things are far easier than what it is today. Then, next point. Simple, formally accepted words, preferably those of, are we with slide number numbered as 4? Simple, formally accepted words?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. So one common behavior, see, I have spelt it British deliberately with a U. I want you to be alert to these subtleties, these nuances. If you are writing for an American journal, I will not write with a U. I will write with O-R. That's it. Whereas because I am writing for a majority of Indian audience, I am writing with a U here. I am consciously doing it. One common behavior among us, the educated Indians. I'm not talking about the illiterate Indians. I'm not talking about the uneducated Indians. The trait among educated Indians is to display our command of the English language using complex and less commonly used words. I've spoken about this before, using the example of my own professor. We have a tendency to use complex words of Greco-Latin roots instead of using equivalent and simple English words familiar to many. I will give you an example here. When I was at my early stage of my life, my professor spoke to me. Oh, that man is very well renowned for his munificence. What is this munificence? I've never heard of it. I never know of it. I don't know how many of you know of this. But then, of course, I dare not ask him what is munificence because he was on a very high pedestal. So I went back to my office or my desk, and then I checked my COD, which was COD is Concise Oxford Dictionary, which always sits on my desk. And it meant that munificence means the ability to give people generously. Of course, it's a single word, no doubt. But then it is not an English word. It is a Latin word, munificence. It comes from the munificent. Munes to give. So we people are, particularly in India, whereas in native speakers, it is changing. Excitedly, they are changing. One of the elements which I noticed here when I came into this country in 1995, that the rule books, you know, the worst English language you can ever read is the legal books, the law books, because they want to take care of every possible loophole so that nothing is missed out. So they write long winding sentences, complex words. So that is why you need lawyers to interpret them. You need a professional translator, something to interpret or mediate between you and the judge. So the lawyers function as interpreters of the legal code. So when I came into this country, I realized that the government of Australia was consciously promoting what is called as plain English, so that everybody understands straight away without necessarily involving a lawyer to transact your business. So therefore, I want you to be conscious about this. Use less complex and more commonly used words. But then I would alert you with one thing. There is a big problem today, which I notice is with this SMSs becoming popular. We are killing the language. That should not happen in scientific writing. For example, in this country, when SMS is written, maybe it is true in India, we write, instead of the preposition to, which is a two-letter word to, we write the number 2. And for we write number 4, which is awkward. Please don't use that. See, it's only a 3-letter word for FOR and 2-letter word to. Are we so lazy that we cannot write that? Write the sentences fully, but use commonly used words, less complex sentences, and that's how your language becomes better and shining. And therefore, people can understand. Gradually, we can undo that an answer to the question which was raised before. A sort of a template that is existing prevalent commonly in the non-English, in native speaking English world, that we speak bad English. We have to undo that. I'll give you an example here for a Greco-Latin word, which is most of us are familiar, most of us use, embellish. Some people take a lot of pride in using the word embellish. Nothing wrong. It's a good word, no doubt. But then why use a very complex word embellish is when there are simpler words like handsome and beautiful are there. You can use handsome, you can use beautiful, which many common people know. Good word, formally accepted words, nothing wrong about them. So why can't you use handsome? Why can't you use beautiful? Unless you have a deliberate reason to choose the word embellish. For example, you can say that the cake or the icing on the cake was done to embellish it. Why don't you say the icing on the cake was done to decorate it? Still, it conveys the meaning, same meaning. So if you go into the root of that embellish word, it comes from embellis, which is a French word, which in turn derives from bellus, which is the Latin word, which means handsome and beautiful. So why don't we simply say beautify, decorate, ornate, or ornamental? All those things are there. There is a book called, or a material called thesaurus, something like a dictionary, which is also available the touch of a button in your computer. You just key a word and then go to the thesaurus. It gives you automatic words. Why go to thesaurus? You don't even go to do that stressful effort. You just go to the Google, write embellished, give me synonyms. It lists you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words which mean the same. Select one which you understand easily and you think that everybody else understands easily, and use it as long as it's a formally accepted word. Then better to minimize non-English words in scientific texts. For example, 2 days ago on 24th of February, I was reading the Hindu. I was simply thrown away, blown away by a word called estampage, which was used in Hindu, which was meant for popular readership. See, I have given the citation there. The Hindu, estampage of stone inscriptions underway in Vellore, which is near Madras, and nearby districts. This is the caption. First of all, I didn't understand what estampage meant. I was familiar with the word, but then it didn't strike me at all. So I immediately went to Google Saraswati. And then he told me that it is not an English word. It is actually estampage. French, which I have spelled there with the French diction. Whereas in English speaking, they say it as estampage in Britain and estampage in America. Anyway, because they speak like that, you can also speak like this. Because I know French, I can say it as estampage. Now, estampage actually means imprinting. This is a technical word used by epigraphists, people who read old languages. So they make a copy of the stone inscription on a painted surface. And that is called estampage. A familiar word which you know within this word estampage is stamp. The word stamp is there. And you all remember a rubber stamp. So estampage is making a copy, a stamp, a reprint or an imprint. So we can simply say imprint, making an imprint. Instead of that, the Hindu has dared to use a difficult word which no common person will understand as estampage directly from an epigraphist's professional language. They may use it in their professional communication, which will be understood by the professional epigraphist. But a Hindu, a journal like Hindu, a popular tabloid like Hindu, cannot afford to use it for a popular readership. They should have translated it and provided a better word like imprinting of stone inscriptions underway in Vellore. And if they wanted to introduce a new word to people, fine. They should have said that imprinting known as estampage and so on. This is how we make silly errors even by reading some of the English language magazines. Anyway, apply care and caution. But then I want to alert that some of the biological passages necessarily require use of Greco-Latin roots, but that is in professional uses. But when it comes to popular writing, just be aware of the fact that we want people to understand and travel with us. So the more we try to restrict, the better it will be. Then I want to talk a little bit about spellings. And with that, we are coming nearly to the close of my talk. So this will be probably the last but one, so I won't take more time. Spellings. Again, we have talked much about it, but I am summarizing what I have said. Are you with the slide 5 spellings?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Raman.
Okay. A word of caution on spellings. The Oxford Dictionary directs British English. So Britain and the countries that follow British English will swear by Oxford Dictionary. The same dictionary applies in India as well. So in India, it is Oxford Dictionary which rules the English language. Whereas it is the Merriam-Webster Dictionary regulates American English. So in America, nobody will use Oxford Dictionary. They will use Merriam-Webster. I've got a copy of Merriam-Webster with me. Big, thick book. Now in Australia, in the recent 20 years or 30 years, they have developed their own dictionary, which is called the Macquarie Dictionary. So there could be local dictionaries, which I'm not sure of, but I'm just giving you some examples here. The interesting commonality here is that Britain and America, Australia, New Zealand, everything speak and write English. But their respective dictionaries dictate not only the spellings, but also aspects of grammar. So be aware of that. The most desirable option in India would be to follow the Oxford, because that is considered the standard there. So the newspapers, the journals, majority of them, I suppose the editors are conscious about it, but at least I can speak for Current Sense, which is run with very super class intellectuals of Indian Institute of Science. They follow, I can confidently say, Oxford Dictionary. And I have known in certain instances, they have spoken to me that this is not there in Oxford Dictionary. Raman, how do you want to explain that? Then I have revised that stand, and therefore I am aware that they check into dictionary Oxford very commonly. Nevertheless, in a shrinking world, in a metaphorical sense, an author of a scientific paper needs to consider where the paper is being sent. If in India and Britain, then follow the Oxford. If in America, follow the Merriam-Webster. A for grammar and B for spellings. A general suggestion. Now, the point I have already spoken about before, in home pages of every journal, the journal managers clarify the style they prefer for spellings and grammar. So you have to read the home page of the journal before you send an article to them. This instruction needs to be carefully followed while writing and submitting a manuscript. Many of us take it for granted. Oh, send it to Nature Communications, send it to Science. Who makes the decision? What is the rationale behind it? Has any of your professors justified that to themselves? There should be a reasoning for everything that goes. Most importantly, we need to keep in mind that we cannot mix either the spellings or grammar. See here, I want you to be aware of another elegant use of language, either or. When you are having two objects of comparison of similar nature, then you always use either or. See, there is some style which is evolving nowadays without either just saying mixed spellings or grammar, which does communicate, but then unfortunately the grammar book does not subscribe to that. So it is always better when two objects are mentioned, we have similar nature, we always use either or. Similarly, when dissimilar nature, then we say neither nor. So we have to continue to sustain to use this, which is considered as a graceful writing. So followed in different English-speaking nations, the above also reinforces that consistency in style is key in English language. Always be consistent in your style, spellings, use of terms, use of language. Say if you stick to American spellings, stick to American spellings throughout. Don't mix them. Don't spell behavior with a U in one place without a U in another place. Color with a U with one place, color without a U in another place. There are meaning differences. I will give you one example here. I remember that in 2000, I think I was in America on a visiting lectureship, and I was staying in, I was lecturing in Nebraska University. I was staying in a service department. And that day I was listening. That was the time when George Bush Jr. was running his polls. So I was just listening to the news. I had to spend some time because I could go only during certain hours to the lab. So at that time I was listening to the news, and somebody was talking about a tennis player. So the tennis player used the word upstart. For a moment I was confused, absolutely confused. And he was referring to using the word upstart, referring to somebody. I can't remember the name of the player he was referring to. In a context that the reader was a male, therefore he mentioned that the upstart, let's say Peter, for example, they just had a fictitious name. So the upstart Peter did extremely well in this game, winning the game. I was very confused because the way I was taught English, upstart to me always meant in a negative context. We always use in India upstart because the British meaning is that it always meant in a negative connotation. So you don't refer to somebody as an upstart in a positive tone, a useless fellow, a derogatory sense. So that's what is meant in upstart. But then here that connotation never meant as anything as upstart. But then later on, I checked with a colleague of mine. I said, well, how come I was listening to this? I didn't understand what was wrong with that person. Then that person laughed and said, in America, the Merriam-Webster's dictionary describes upstart in the literal meaning of that. That means one who starts something up. That means somebody who is a beginner somewhere. So there's a totally different meaning there. So similarly, when I was young and I was in school, my teachers used to refer to somebody. Of course, they have used English very fluently, although I studied in a Tamil medium school. They used English very fluently, and they spoke that, he's a character. That's how they will refer to a person. That means they implied that not a desirable person. In other words, he is such a crazy clown, so he will not fit into our sophisticated elite group. That's what they meant by that. But then after coming here into this country, I heard the same usage, but it didn't mean that sort of a negative tone in that. Then I asked somebody, why do you say that? I'm not used to hearing he's a character. What do you mean? The Australian asked me. Then I said, this is what I know. No. It doesn't mean that way. When somebody is jovial, when somebody is comical, when somebody is humorous, somebody is hilarious, then we say that person is a character. So you see how the meanings differ in terms of usages. So you just cannot afford to mix spellings and grammar just because we are familiar with certain usage, which will have a different connotation and different meaning in a different country, although it is an English speaking country. So just be aware of that and be conscious about it. Then I come to the next point. I am on slide 6 now. I'm sorry, I thought this is the last one, but it is not the last one. Sorry, I've got one or two more slides, but I'll be very quick. Use of punctuation symbols. If you see the cartoon there, the symbols used are, I've borrowed it from the source. It's not mine. So you can see the original I have referred to. The citation source is acknowledged there. It's a difference between, quote, let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma. Both are same words. But then the punctuation mark is let's eat grandma. That is an invitation extended to the grandmother to eat together. And the second one without the comma, let's eat grandma, means grandmother becomes the food for you. So you eat grandmother. So which is very awkward. You cannot say that. So an unpunctuated text or a badly punctuated one is similar to a verbal diarrhea. We need to use the correct punctuation symbol to relay the intended message clearly. See the example there. Next, one common error we generally commit is interchanging the use of semicolons and colons. I have explained what a semicolon is and a colon. A semicolon functions similar to a full stop, but the advantage of using a semicolon is that we do not repeat the subject in the immediately following sentence. We take an advantage of avoiding that. For example, you can say this. I'm just using some silly sentence. That's what comes to my mind immediately. This is a black umbrella, semicolon, useful in rain. So you don't repeat the umbrella is useful in rain. So you say a couple of words. So semicolon functions like a full stop, but the advantage is we don't repeat the full sentence in the next sentence. We don't need to repeat the noun or even the verb. So that's an advantage. Whereas in a colon, it is a handy item in effective writing, is usually preceding a list. The forward slash, and so for example, you want to make a list of items A, B, C, D, E. You say following colon A, B, C, D, E. Then the use of forward slash symbol to imply R or by many nowadays is awkward. So nowadays many people write or use the symbol to imply the word or. I don't agree with that. I dislike it because dictionaries don't subscribe to this. Still that forward slash symbol means per 10 kilometers per hour. You ride a bike, it goes to a speed of 10 kilometers per hour. You write like 10 km slash forward slash h or 100 kilometers per hour, 100 km slash per hour. That is the usage still accepted for per. The dictionaries do not explain per as or. So you cannot use either or and replace it with slash. His slash or is incorrect. You have to say his or her. You have to say that. But people use. So if you want to use that, that's up to you. But it's not stylish. It is not, it is right. Then use of single and double quote marks is messy even in developed nations among native speakers. None is generally clear on the difference between their uses. I've deliberately used the word none is. The preferred way of using none is singular. You don't say none are. But I find many are using none as or as well as is. But the preferred style is none are because the way none has developed is no one. No one is generally clear. So it has got shortened over time. Accepted modern grammar as none, no one, none is generally clear. And beyond that, therefore, I will suggest that we should reserve the use of double quote marks at places where we quote a passage from another text. Whereas, in contrast, single quote marks can be used where we want to emphasize either a word or a string of words in terms of their importance or imply a pun. You mean, oh, he is a smart fellow. So you want to say smart, within quotes, that means that person is not a smart person, but you are implying it as a pun. So that is another usage. Sorry, I'm running on because of time. So sorry for that. I wanted to speak more, but I don't have time. So let's just quickly run through the slides and be done with that. Now I am on a section called Common Erroneous Use of English Words and Phrases. I've given you a few examples. Use of look forward to, I have already spoken to. It's a gerund usage. It has to be followed by an ing word. Then definite and indefinite articles like a, an, indefinite articles, the, definite articles. So is there any rule about it? There's no rule about it. The rule that exists about use of indefinite, definite articles is how does it read in terms of comfort for the reader. So as long as the reader is comfortable with that, then you can insert the or now. So be careful. I can't give you any rule. Similarly, its and it apostrophe s. So don't use it apostrophe s to mean ownership, possessiveness. For in that sense, you have to use its without apostrophe. It is something like yours sincerely, and in that sense. So its has no apostrophe to imply ownership. It's wrapper. When you are referring to a book's wrapper, you can say its wrapper without an apostrophe. Whereas it apostrophe s is a contraction of it is. So when you say it apostrophe s, it means it is. Then apparently similar sounding words like accept and accept. Be conscious about such words, where to use them, don't mix them, don't get lost. I don't see a problem with many of us in India, but many students of native speakers make this big blunder of confusing between accept and accept. Then collective nouns, I particularly refer to certain words or certain nouns like furniture, fish, and so on. The plurals and singulars are the same. So explanation, a few more. I can't think of immediately anything. So all these, the plurals and singulars are the same. Then I have already spoken to you about the useless words, meaningless words like etc. and very. So be conscious about these things. I can only create an awareness in you, and to create that awareness, I can only give some examples, and I'm just doing that here. Then in the next slide, which is the structure of a document and logic behind that structure, I have spoken about these in the beginning sections. A scientific documents, are we in the same slide with me? Structure and document? Structure of a document? Okay.
Yes.
A scientific document
Yes,
needs to be clearly structured. That is something very characteristic about it. You can laugh at that joke which I have pasted there with the source whenever you have the time. That structure reflects personal discipline of the presenter and the respect I've used deliberately the forward slash, which many people use, but has, verb has to be has singular, because he has, she has for the readers. Then third, it has to be neatly presented. Graceful prose is another element that reflects the above traits. So when you write when you write neatly and present in a graceful prose, please be aware of the fact that you are showing your profound respect for your readers. So this, if I spent my time in preparing the slides as much as I could, of course I prepared without the lines. I don't know why the lines came, but then it is out of sheer respect and regard for all of you. You may all be younger than me, but it doesn't mean that I can be careless and disrespectful. Normally, the structure would entail the following features, which most of you know: introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion and conclusion. An abstract will precede an introduction, an acknowledgement will succeed the conclusion. At the end, a list of references will occur. Why this structure? What is the logic behind this arrangement? Everything has got a meaning, everything has got a context. Don't simply follow because every paper has got this design. There is an explanation for all this. And I want you to look into that and understand why it is like that. Everything has got a relevance. Everything has got a purpose. Nothing is written randomly. In science, everything has got a meaning. Only thing you have to ask the question, why it is done so? What is the purpose for that? and you will find an answer in Google. So don't hesitate to ask the Google. She will give you, I say she because I consider Google as a female, who is Saraswati for me. So in conclusion, the last said, oh, you should all be heaving a sigh of relief. I can make it out. What, Shruti? I can see a bit of smile in you. All right. Style refers to the way we express ourselves in writing. No single standard dictates a style which writers have to follow. Different styles interest readers. Variety fascinates. So remember, this is one of the reasons why we don't publish in the same journal. We select various journals, because innately, intuitively, we are conditioned for variety. So one of the reasons why we don't publish in the same journal again and again and again. So there is an instinctive variation, desire. In biology, we call it as biodiversity, the diversity of nature. So it's all there, everywhere it is there. So even in writing, it is there, and variety fascinates. But there are two items, readability and elegance, always characterize, run uniformly in effective writing. So good style communicates information effectively. It moves the reader along. It moves the reader along. See here, punctuation problem. Here moves the reader along easily from word to word, sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph, and one from section to the next. Bad style frustrates and more often confuses. See, if you have a bad style, then you remember that your reader is not going to read what you have written. That means even that one reader you have lost. That means you have lost the purpose of writing. So further to considering, here I have used a gerund usage here. Further to considering the points discussed earlier, for achieving easy readability of manuscripts, we need to develop the practice of subjecting pre-final drafts to reading by experienced scientists who will not only comment on the quality of science, but also advise on the quality of the language employed. It's a clear statement, so I don't need to elaborate on that. The intent of the present presentation is to awaken and stimulate the sensitivity that the language used in scientific papers has a purpose, has a key purpose, which is nearly equal to in importance to the reported science. It is not only the science that is reported, but it is also the way you report it. So there is a purpose. So when awareness of that sense of purpose enhances, then we would naturally take more care to present papers as readable and graceful. So we have to be alert to what we are writing. Please remember that at least we should have one reader when we write something. If we lose that reader also, then the purpose of writing is completely lost and we have no relevance of writing. Anyway, so I wanted to explain to you more on the logic of writing papers, but I think I've gone far out of time. So I'm not going to hassle you more. So there are so many volumes available to you. So I will just given you a picture of some that are available. But the most important thing, the take-home message here, if at all we are interested in, it is that I want you to be conscious about this. I want you to be alert. It is as important as doing a scientific investigation. Writing and communication is equally important to what you find, what you explore. They have absolutely the same importance. Because if you write badly, it is writing something in Swahili to a person who does not read Swahili. If you want your message to be understood by people, then even if you are writing English, don't imagine that what you write will be understood by everybody. Use a standard, easily understandable English language so that people travel with you, appreciate what you have written. People cannot appreciate anything if they have no sense of understanding. So you need to really communicate well. So more than the English style, what I have focused on here, it is the sensitivity to communication which is important. You need to be sensitive to that. You are not here as an English professor. You are not trying to use Shakespeare and Milton and Wordsworth and who else not and even contemporary writers and quote extensively from them. You are here to convey your message in a language which will be understood by everybody, especially the targeted audience. In this case, if you are targeting the popular audience or popular readers, then write for them. Use a popular language. Don't use estampage as a silly Hindu correspondent has written. I would not write it in a popular readership, because even for a person like me who is familiar with words, I had to struggle to find out what it meant. Although I knew French, it doesn't mean that I know every word in French. So therefore, let us not strain the reader. You must make the reader as comfortable as possible. Write in simple prose, elegant prose, write briefly, write crisply, and write with a non-monotonous language. Try to make it as exciting as possible. You must see that your reader travels with you from the beginning to the end. If you don't do that, then you have failed miserably in your task. I'm sorry to strike a negative note here, but then otherwise the message doesn't go well. I'll have some water and finish my talk.
Fantastic, sir. Wow. Okay, that's great. So, so this is, as I was saying, I mean, I don't want to steal the vote of thanks from Avantika, because she's been voted to give the vote of thanks to you. So I think, I mean, but still, I think, I mean, I have to say a few words. So this is absolutely fantastic. As you were saying, I mean, it's all expected because you're such an expert, and thank you for really, sir. I mean, this is, I mean, you've given your time. This is absolutely phenomenal, and we've taken some notes. We're quite serious as well. So absolutely fantastic. So thank you really, really so much for your time. So what I don't know what else to say apart from profusely having to thank you for that. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I see there are some questions, but I think we won't take questions now. I think let Professor Raman has.
No, I think if you have time, I am prepared to answer at least a couple of questions. No problem.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I am okay. So I mean, it's not a problem at all. I mean, as long as
you people are not stressed hearing my voice.
No, I'm, well, you know me, sir. I'm such a huge fan of yours and being tutored as well. So one thing I wanted to say, I mean, of course, I did tell you, but I wanted the others also to know is that, thanks to, Professor Raman's mentoring and everything, for the first time this year, I won about $500 in teaching. And of course, we did something else with it. So that's all the constant tutoring that I've had. And, this is fantastic. I mean, I'm an example myself. So I think, this is something you all should also enjoy is what I truly think. And of course, 4 or 5 years ago, like on a phone call, I was just letting Professor Raman know as to why am I struggling. I mean, I was just getting a really low score on the teaching and the presentations and everything. I think Professor Raman corrected me on certain things and provided me some guidance on the style that I should adopt. And I think I've come quite a long way. This is fantastic, sir. Thank you really so much. And I think Mukesh, you had a quick question, Mukesh. Did you want to go real quick?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the session. Beautiful session, sir. I had the question. You have used materials and methods instead of methodology. And in Indian, people generously use methodology instead of materials and method. Could you please put a light on that?
Yes. Okay. You have touched on a very sensitive aspect, but I want to talk about it. I'm glad you reminded me, mainly because, are you hearing me all?
Yes, sir. Actually, okay, I've been following you since 2017. So you missed this point. So I just.
No, that's fine. I'll talk about it. See, the last section, I wanted to elaborate with a cartoon, but then I didn't have the time. So I thought I will better wind off. If you guys have the interest and motivation, I can do a separate session on that. But anyway, and I will answer this question. The word methodology, first of all, I want all of you to find out the definition of methodology with your dictionary, which is Google. Go to Google, ask what is methodology and see the meaning for yourself. It is not materials and methods. Methodology is actually the philosophy that refers to the methodology, materials and methods. There are a number of philosophical explanations that are starting from the time of the historical empirical thinking started. This methodological thinking element has come into existence at that time. So methodology, if I can simplify that explanation, is the philosophy of, or the underpinning explanation of materials and methods. It is a philosophy. So if you go back into the empirical explanation of science, which evolved from that, it is starting from the famous poet, empiricist, scientist, Francis Bacon in the 17th century. So it is the British thinker Francis Bacon who gave shape to empirical thinking. So he gave the first concept of methodology. That means the philosophy that underpins the methods. So in basically, we are not talking about the philosophical underpinnings of methodology in any paper. What we are talking here is that how did I do my experiment? So where is the question of methodology here? How did I do my experiment? For example, if I were an ecologist, I will say that I did a transect of 200 kilometers. And over these 200 kilometers, I subdivided into sub-transects of 1 kilometer each. And everywhere I built circular transects or circular, whatever it is, measurement units. 20 of them scattered all around that vertical transect. And then I sampled the materials in that, which are representative of that. And this building the transects has got a methodological underpinning philosophical explanation. We are not talking about that. So how can any, sorry, I am very angry about this. How can anybody use the word methodology here when you are not talking about the underpinning methodology or the philosophy of that? So how can you use the word methodology here? So what you have to technically say, you look at any standard English native speaking journal, they will only use the word materials and methods. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir. More than. Thank you.
No, you have to go into the literature and find out, because of the want of time, I am just pointing out. You please look for that. See, the problem with most of us in India is, including myself, this is the reason why I could not select the topic and my supervisor when I wanted to do my research, because this training was not given to me. When I was doing my MSc, nobody taught me how to identify a research problem. What is the underpinning philosophy of research? Nothing was taught. I was given some coursework training, and after that, I thought this a natural progression is to do a PhD, and I thought that was the next question. I identify somebody whom I thought was a big man, and then I went and asked that big man, can I do your PhD with you? And he said, yes, yes, and you do this project, and that's all it is. Whereas what would be very ideal is that you are given an orientation about what is research when you are doing an MSc program. You have to be taught what is research philosophy. And how do you carry what I have talked to you is this coursework subject I used to offer to my honors students in Orange when I was teaching there in Charles Sturt University. Honors students, BSc honors students, I have used the same material for all of you. Because I used to teach them what is a thesis, what is a dissertation, how to prepare for a dissertation, what are the underpinning philosophies of research, what are the different theories of research, and how do you develop a theory, how do you identify a project, how do you identify a problem, what makes you to do the research, what is the research motivation, and so on. So this is all done before the student really determines that he wants or she wants to do PhD or not. And at that time, the student is given certain understanding that, okay, this is my area of interest, and I will identify the person with whom I will work. And that person dictates the professor, and not the professor dictates the student. It's the other way about. He will go and tell, I found in the internet that you are a capable person to supervise my work because I'm interested in the subject. Can we do the more greater talking so that we thrash every detail out? So there is no clarity about the research method, which is the process. And without that, how can I expect anything to happen? So you don't know what is methodology and what is materials and methods. So it will be 100% incorrect to say methodology in a paper. You have to only talk about these are the materials I used. If you use a foot ruler, you say I use a foot ruler. If you use a 6 inches test tube, you say I use a 6 inches test tube. I boiled it in a Bunsen flame, I boiled it in a Bunsen flame. That is materials. Or methods. I did this. And you justify the rationale for doing that. And that's the way you refer to the methodological explanation. That falls a part of the methods explanation. Well, I need a full session for that. So if I want to go into it, I will be speaking endlessly. You will miss not only your lunch, but also your dinner. So I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think, in the book chapter that we wrote, so which thankfully you also went through, sir, and then made some corrections. I think Mukesh exactly did this. Methodology, and I think we made the change to materials and methodology. And I think we had a discussion for quite some time, but that's fine. It's better to hear from Professor Raman again. That's really good. So thank you, sir. And again, there's a question from Kaleshwara Swami. Do you want to go next, please?
Yeah, yes, sir. Hope you are listening to me. And thanks, Raman, for a very nice lecture. In fact, a lot of my students are attending with the. I want to draw two things here. One of the widely used sentence in India, or I can say it is Indianized, is that most of them use it is called as. Okay, it is called as. Whenever they write definition or something.
Kaleshwar,
hopefully it is
again.
actually
I
wrong.
didn't hear it well.
Okay. Okay, I'll repeat. So there was an internet problem. No, one of the Indianized word most of the people use is it is called as. It is called as. I think it is a very wrong sentence. Whenever you define something and use this sentence. There's one thing, and the second thing is that. So I think around 25-30 students of mine were attending this. Another very important lecture which we we can use your expertise is on how to become a good writer. Okay, so because not all have the capability to become a good writer. So if you really throw some light on this, it's going to be very useful for us. So thank you.
Kaleshwara, I'll tell you one thing. You see, I want to help my people.
Yes, sir.
And by my people, I mean my Indians.
Yes, sir.
Although I'm living in Australia for different reasons, my heart and soul go for India. So I am prepared to do any talk for anybody. When I come in person, I will come to Shimoga, Shivamogga, but then I will, if I can't come, I will do it on this kind. I am prepared to do anything. If you think I will be useful, I am there to help.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So don't hesitate. See,
sure.
In Bible, there is a saying, knock, you will get. Speak, you will be heard. So same here. You have to speak, I will hear you. I will speak again. See, but unless you knock, I will not respond.
No, I will, sir. I'm sure.
Anybody for that matter, I am telling you that if you want to discuss anything with me, I am prepared to raise not one hand, but both hands. And no charge, no money, all done free. I have earned enough money and that is enough for me. I am more than happy to give any help to anybody, particularly Indians.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
But I have got a rider on that. When I get angry, you should take it in the right spirit.
Sure. I know. I have experience.
Because I get very angry very quickly.
Yes, sir.
So that alone you should take it. It's part of the package.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Any further questions, people? Real quick before we.
Yeah, but do we need all this formal vote of thanks?
I mean, Avantika's.
You see that Avantika has an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, that's one thing, and she'll kill me. she'll kill me in the next session, sir. Tomorrow morning, when we meet, I mean, I'll be in trouble. So I think let us. And people voted for her, so I think she's a popular candidate. If it is okay with you, so it won't take a long time. So Avantika, do you want to?
I see Gayatri, I see Mukesh, and I see you, but I don't see Avantika.
Okay, but if you stop sharing the screen, sir, if you don't mind, I think you would probably have better visibility of who's in there, sir. I think it's.
You mean you want me to close that slide pictures?
Yes, please, sir. Yeah, stop sharing, sir. I think that on the.
No.
On the pane on.
What do I do? I'm sorry, I'm not too informed about this.
That is fine.
Sir, so what should I do? Participate.
Okay, sir. On the bottom part of the screen.
Yes.
Sir. The fifth button should say exactly around the center of the screen. It should say share. Stop sharing the screen.
Oh, it's not there at the bottom. For me, it is at the top.
At the top, yes.
Okay. All right. Brilliant. I can see the big smile on Shruti. I can see a big smile on Avantika. Oh, yes. Everybody has a big smile.
Yes.
Colgate advertisement.
So Avantika, so do you want to?
Surya, do I see a big change in you?
Well, okay. There are two reasons. One is that the barber shop is closed here due to the COVID. I gave myself a haircut. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's why I was not available on the video,
You are hiding.
Yes.
Well, there is always a consolation here. Wise people. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I took a longer time than allowed. Extremely sorry. Apologies.
Pleasure as always, sir. Pleasure as always. Absolutely. Yeah. So Avantika, do you want to?
Yeah, so since the receiver is a bit skeptic about receiving a very formal one, so I'll try to make it a little bit less formal.
Brilliant.
So I'm in awe, like the word is that I'm in awe. I think we all are in awe right now. And I haven't really found a word that will not fail to express the gratitude that we are feeling, the participants of React 22 are feeling right now. And the only way to thank, I think, you is to remember everything and to incorporate what we learned today from you in every time we write it. And I think that's the only way that we can all thank you. And
brilliant.
we did feel the momentum that you said earlier. We really did feel the momentum, and like, trust me, we were flowing with your momentum. It was like so engaging. And yes, Sri told us a lot about you, and everything seems to be true now. Like whatever we have heard of you from him, like we see that it's all so true, and it felt like we already knew you. And thank you for introducing us to precise, elegant, understandable, conscious, sensitive, engaging, dignified writing, and which and also reminded us to involve some modern concepts like gender equality when we write. And thank you for putting in your energy and disseminating so much knowledge this enormous amount of knowledge that you hold in yourself. And last but not the least, thank you so much for giving us Sri. Thank you for showing us this beautiful relationship that you both share. And one thing I think we all have learned is that we will definitely not suggest that we eat our grandmas ever again. Thank you.
That is good.
Brilliant. I'm glad you picked up the pun.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Very nice, very nice. Well
Excellent.
done. Well done.
I'm so sorry if I didn't respond or communicate with all of you individually, but I hope someday it'll happen. And when we get to meet each other personally in some context or other, do well. See, there is another person in this group, Narayanan, so feel free to communicate with him. And he is another very respected friend of mine. I'm so honored and delighted that he could attend this session. Anyway, thanks to him in particular, and thanks to all of you. Just be aware of the fact that English is not our mother tongue, but it doesn't mean that we cannot master it. We can master it. We need to put in some effort into it. And we can definitely put the native speakers to shame if we speak it in the most appropriate manner, we write it in the most appropriate manner. But the whole problem is that most of us, at least, are being trained to see the veracity of our science. But it is coming at the cost of the way we communicate. I want you to recognize that communication is also having an equal and powerful role in your science. As I said, if your science has to be read and understood and followed by people, which is the purpose of science, science has to be communicated either orally or by written medium. So if you want to do it, then do it with a lot of consciousness. Don't simply write something and then give it away to the journal. The journal will kick it back with the same speed. Not necessarily that it is a bad science, but it is badly presented. So if you can do it a bit consciously and take a little effort, little sincerity being shown in that, then it will have a long innings for you. Of course, we can always listen to there are very famous politicians in India who say that English is not our mother tongue. We seem to be patronizing and eulogizing something. But then you need to make the decision. If you want to speak to the international audience, then that is the only window of opportunity for you at this stage. There's no point in saying that we have got very, coming as I do from Tamil Nadu, there is always a big fight about Tamil language and its ancestry and its oldness and its ancientness and so on. But I can't carry it all the way on my head. It has a purpose, yes. When I'm lecturing on the last week or 3 weeks before, I spoke on the ancientness of Tamil and the origins of Tamil to a few friends of mine, but I spoke in English. That is the irony or the pun there, because one of the audience is a Sri Lankan friend of mine who doesn't understand Tamil language, but he was interested in the language, so he wanted to come. So I can't deny that opportunity for him. So I had to speak in English about Tamil language, which is a simple but nothing but an irony. Fate of irony. So anyway, language is interesting. We learn. Be open, be conscious, and always consult the simplest device that is available to you at the tip of your finger, which is I call Saraswati. Always check it. When you write a word, am I using it in the right sense? Have people used it? See, taking it for granted that I know everything, this is the implied meaning. It may be right, but also remember it may be wrong as well. I've given you a number of examples. So be alert, be conscious. I wanted to create only a sensitivity, and that's all I could do in this. How many hours? 3 hours? 3 hours. So I can only create a sensitivity to you. Be sensitive. Be conscious about it. There are people to help you. We are ready to help you as much as we can. If you know some native speakers of English, and if they are willing to help, check with them. Nothing wrong. Is that for me, Srinath?
Not really, sir. It's fine.
Kindly ensure that you provide your feedback.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, you are all very patient audience.
Sir.
And, I know I ran through my slides towards the end because of the poor management of time. I'm sorry about that. But then I got carried away a little bit.
So this is
earlier thing.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, sir. I mean, first of all, thank you for your time, sir. I think no words would be enough to thank you for the sheer energy and the enthusiasm. That's absolutely fantastic. Time and again. For I don't know. That's fantastic, sir. Thank you. And sir, as you're saying,
it's sad that I have not seen everybody in person because the slides are simply running around. So I don't know.
So there are the other YAP students are on. There's a forward arrow on the right hand.
Yeah, I'm clicking that, but it doesn't include the photos. It has only the names.
That is because our people are really shy. The YAP students, I had to tell them at least 50 times to show the faces. And the problem I have, sir, my institute.
I see a number of names, but their faces are not present.
They're quite shy, sir. Especially,
Doesn't okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay. We'll respect that.
Yeah, of course, yes. Our institute.
I am a shameless fellow who always shows my face in the camera. Although I don't have a face cut of a film actor.
No, well, absolutely, sir. That's okay. Initially I had a problem, sir, because the directive from my institute was that I cannot push, especially if it's a female attendee, if there's girls, I couldn't tell them either because I had to. It was hard, but finally I think people were okay to just open up and show their faces. That's great. So people, the feedback link is there. Kindly provide your feedback. That's very important. You have 6 columns in there. Kindly do that, right? It's extremely important. Of course, some of you are providing feedbacks on the chat. That's great. But we need one place where all your feedback is there. That's important because we'll review it. I'll send it to Raman sir. I promised him I'll do that. Last time there was a bit of a mess, but this time I thought we should get this organized. Our IT department helped us organize this. So kindly do this. This is very, very important. Extremely.
Does anyone have any questions which have not been found time to ask?
Yes, sir. There are about 7 or 8 questions. There's a column that says questions for Professor Raman. I'm going to share those with you, sir. This now may not be an appropriate time because it's already, we've gone past 3 hours now. So we've compiled some questions, sir. I'll happily share them with you. That's one thing. Yeah.
So it will be about 10:45 for you guys, right? Or 11:30.
11:15.
11:15.
In India.
Yeah, we are 2.5 hours in advance.
Yeah.
It's 1:45 for me.
Yes, sir. It's 12:45 for me, sir. Yeah, so it's fine. I'm into the next day, which is great. Wow, started off yesterday. That's nice. Yeah. And sir, just wanted to let you also know, sir, that we've requested Suryanarayanan sir also to offer a presentation, and I think he is concerned to do that. So yes, sir, he is concerned.
He is a great mentor for me.
My God.
I didn't know that, sir.
Okay, so because the time is running out, I didn't want to say anything. Please, all of you know that I am junior to Raman in age, experience, and in my scientific whatever achievements. He is the mentor. He just always makes fun of me, so I'm always being made fun of. I accept this also. Thank you. He doesn't want me to call him sir.
I don't want even these young people to call me sir. How can I ask you to say sir? Come on.
Okay, sir. I won't call you sir. Okay, sir?
Absolutely. It's great.
Anyway, thank you for the opportunity, Professor Subramaniam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sir. Why call? Now it's my turn, sir. Now it's sir.
Look, all of you, I'll tell you, I'm just making some fun, and it's just a joke.
Sir.
So just don't bother about all that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Be open. See, politeness and respect does not come by saying sir. It is coming from the heart.
Yeah.
So just by calling me by name, it doesn't mean that you are impolite. I know in Indian culture, I have grown there, I have lived there, so it has been a practice. So somewhere we have to break it.
Absolutely.
And respect and politeness is just not simply coming. See, saying for sir and on the face and abusing somebody behind is undesirable. Whereas I would say, abuse me right in my face, on my face. Tell me you are an idiot. I will take it. See, stabbing in the back, we should never do. See, one of the ways in which I always tell everybody, call me by name. I am very proud of that name. That is the name I got it. Anyway, nice, lovely meeting all of you. And thank you for the time. Thank you for your patience. I don't know how many of you missed your breakfast. At least you have a big lunch. Sunday, enjoy it. And have a great time. Nice meeting you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank
Namaskar.
you. Thank you, Raman.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Raman. This was great.
Thank you so
Bye,
much,
everyone.
People,
Thank you, sir.
feedback. Before you leave, feedback. The link is there. Feedback, please.
I am only thinking of feeding.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something I promised
It's
you.
1:45, heading to 2 o'clock, lunch for me. So feeding.
Yeah. Sir, it's almost 1 o'clock for
Anyway,
me.
feel free to contact me if I can be of any assistance, any help. So I'll be more than happy to do it. So as I said, definitely yes. It's part of the game. We'll do it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Somebody has to shut down, so I will shut down. See, bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I mean, if I shut down, I think it'll kick everyone out, sir. So I think I'll be the last person to go. But thank you, sir. Thank you again, sir. I'll call you, sir. I'll be in touch. Thank
Sir,
you.
hoping to meet you soon.
Lovely.
Again.
Same here. I can't remember everybody's name. I can't remember everybody's face, but I remember the smiles, which have been wonderful to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
The
you.
lecture
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
People,